This is John Jackson Miller, and you're listening to the Star Wars Canon Podcast. May the Force be with you.
There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All I
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 39 of the Star Wars Canon Podcast. I'm so happy to be sitting down and talking Star Wars with you guys again. I am your host, Brian Miller, and we've got a big show lined up for you guys this week. This is the returning show after my harvest break, and during my harvest break, I've been a busy bee and putting together a new canon crew. So I have got 3 new co-hosts on this podcast with me. I'm very anxious for you guys to meet them. If you guys missed the live Facebook Q&A that we did, I think a week ago tonight, actually. We're recording this on Thursday. I think it was a week ago tonight. They're here tonight. We're going to be talking a little bit about Star Wars. We got some new stuff to talk about. And we are going to be putting Luke Skywalker on trial. And then we got some mailbag questions for you guys. So first off, let me introduce you guys to your new co-hosts for the Star Wars Canon Podcast. First off, and forgive me, guys, because you guys have all said where you're from. And Usuf's the only one I can actually remember where he's from. So, Steven, let's start with you. Stephen Hall, everybody. Stephen, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you love Star Wars so much, man?
All right, thanks, Brian. My name's Stephen Hall. I'm from Indiana, Pennsylvania, about an hour and a half outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've grown up my whole life loving Star Wars since as early as I can remember, 3 or 4 years old, and it's been a part of my life throughout, every year. It's gotten even stronger with the, really starting with 2000, we were just talking about 2014 here. As the new canon started, I made it my goal to really dive in and read and absorb everything canon. And so it's kind of been like a passion project outside of work, just to have the chance now to talk with 3 other like-minded individuals and then share our thoughts with a greater Star Wars community across the world. I just couldn't be more excited. So thanks for bringing me on board.
Yeah, no problem. I'm glad to have you. Let's keep on going here. Let's see. JG, John Gregory, what is it that you would like to be called, brother?
We'll go with JG since that's what I go with on social media.
JG it is. JG, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? And actually, this is the first time we've actually got to talk to you
Yes.
tonight. You were a little predisposed for our live Facebook Q&A, but that's all right. Priorities, you know what I mean? So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and why you love Star Wars so much, man?
Yeah, I'm JG, and I live we say Pittsburgh, but it's technically McKeesport, so I'm actually a half hour away, so pretty close to Steven, actually. And for Star Wars, I grew up watching the original trilogy on VHS in the diapers, and then just as I got older, watched Clone Wars, and then as Rebels came, it really reignited when Disney started creating this connective canon story, and it just became something that I wanted to invest in, like almost like this mythology, this lore, and so yeah, ever since then, it just gets crazier and crazier, more consuming.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And like I said, I'm glad to have you on as well. And last but certainly not least, from all the way around on the other side of the world from us, the Canon Podcast has apparently gone international. Usuf Wali, everybody. Usuf, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you hope to bring to the show, man?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. My name is Yusuf Wali. I'm really happy to be part of this podcast, genuinely. I am all the way across the world from you guys, and that is how we met. None of us have ever met in person or face to face. Got in touch with Brian online, and I've been an avid listener of the podcast because I just love Star Wars. Like the other guys, I'm in my late 20s. I'm not sure about the other guys, but I mean, I've been a fan of Star Wars since I was a teenager. Star Wars isn't just an escape. Of course, it's an escape, because life is life, and it has its ups and downs, obviously, but the passion that Star Wars really gives me, the lore, everything that Steven and JG really said. I mean, Steven touched on, he basically mentioned that, it's something that it's like a passion project you want to do, and it makes it keep going, and that you really like it. JG mentioned that, it's something that you basically gives you a lot of pleasure, like you're genuinely happy you're happy just looking into, and that's both of them really just resonate with me. I'm really happy to be part of this podcast. I live just outside of Cairo, in between Giza and Sheikh Zayed. So when I say that, I'm mainly saying it because apparently we have a lot of listeners from Egypt, which I'm really happy to hear. Apparently we got this news last week that that this podcast has been trending in the Egypt podcast market. So I'm really happy to hear that. And for everybody who's listening, we've got a whole group in Egypt planned. We could do activities, and we've got a lot of stuff planned where we might even set up like some sort of battalion over here. But genuinely, the reason why I'm really excited to be here with Brian and Steven and JG and Richard, of course, Richard J and Nick Albers, a lot of props to them. I love this space. The Star Wars Canon Podcast is not just a place where we can just, let's talk about Star Wars and things that are happening. No, this is a space where we know that we can just talk about stuff. We can talk about the news. We can respect each other's opinions, and we can air everything out openly. I'm sure everybody will agree with me when we say we're really excited to get this going. Thanks, Brian, to all of your efforts. Let's really kick this off. I'm really excited.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, and to kind of drive home what Usuf was saying, if you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast where, yeah, we talk about the new canon, the quote unquote Disney canon, as everybody likes to call it, but it's not all sunshine and roses. Just before we started recording, we were talking about some canon that was just god awful, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. So there are bits of it that even we're not fans of, but we try to respect everybody else's opinions because we know it's such a diverse. Star Wars fans are so diverse, and they're very opinionated, and they're not afraid to put their opinion out there. So it's one of those. This is one of those places where we try to be accepting of everybody's opinions, and if everybody agreed all the time, we would have nothing to talk about. You know what I mean? So. To kind of drive home what Usuf was saying, that's exactly what we try to do. So those are your new co-hosts, guys. They're going to be with me throughout the show for however long this thing decides to run. Hopefully for the next, 10,000 generations or 1,000 generations, however long the Jedi lasted. So, and it's going to take an active Sith to take us down. So we've got a lot to talk about tonight. Before we get into the news, though, please forgive me because I think somebody told me on not this past live Q&A that we all did together, but the last one I did, that I talk about the Canon Library mobile app way too much. And this is something that has been a pet project of mine personally. The Star Wars Canon Library mobile app, guys, it's available now on Google Play if you have Android. It will be out on iOS this spring. Definitely go check it out. As a matter of fact, I think a couple of one of our mailbag questions tonight, somebody said that they have been utilizing it, and it's really helped them with Clone Wars. So go check out that mobile app. There's a full timeline, links to buy everything, not from the app, but through it. What else is on there, guys? This podcast is on there. The YouTube channel's on there, and a community page where you guys can kind of share pictures and your own reviews of whatever you're reading. So wanted to throw that out there. You guys ready to talk about some news?
Oh, yes.
All right, let's do it.
Let's get into this. Right off the bat, since there's so much to talk about, I had to narrow it down to just a few topics. But if there's anything in particular anybody else wants to talk about before we get out of the news section, we can definitely touch on that. The first thing I had down was Mandalorian Season 2 so far. We are getting, the 4th episode tomorrow night?
Yes.
Guys, what do you think about the season so far?
Man,
it's insane, right?
All the emotions.
It took season 1 and just took it up another level. Absolutely.
Hold my baby Yoda and watch this is basically what happened. So,
well, and in my opinion, the child's kind of taken a back seat, at least in, chapters 9, 10, 11 so far that have been released at this time of recording. And I'm excited to see, hopefully they're saving him for the back half of the season, maybe more force sensitive and force powerful, because he showed more force, in all of season 1 than he did in season 2 so far. You know what I mean?
Oh, so far in season 2, he hasn't shown any force sensitivity. Any force sensitivity. But yeah, I think exactly as you're saying, they're saving it. What do you think, JG?
Oh, I think this season really so far has really shown it's a love letter to us fans who really have committed to the canon. If you really have for the past 5+ years have really invested in reading the books and watching the shows and really getting invested, this is our payoff. Here it is finally. A lot of us wanted that with the sequel trilogy and we really didn't get it that much. And here it is now in The Mandalorian. We're finally getting to see that investment pay off.
Yeah, because before this, the only real payoff that we had was the ghost in Rogue One and Chopper and the mention of Harrison Dula. And then if you read the novel for Rise of Skywalker, and that was basically the only kind of nods to other canon that you really got before this.
What about Saw Gerrera?
It's Saw Gerrera. That's about it.
Well, yeah, we saw great, yeah, but no, you're completely right about it. I mean, when Bo-Katan shows up, I mean, because we're far enough out from this last episode, we can talk spoilers about anybody listening to this podcast. 8 days after it came out, you've seen it. So Bo-Katan showing up, there are certain shots in that episode of Mandalorian that I had to double take, because even though it's live action, the way they made her armor and colored it and painted it, and it looks sometimes like it's straight out of Clone Wars. You know what I mean? You have to remind yourself that you're watching something live action. But I was telling Kirsty, Bo-Katan aged really well for living in the Star Wars universe, and she's arguing with me on it because she stays fit and she's active. No, she's aging really way too well. Like, am I the only one that sees this? That she's like, I mean, she should be around the same age as what Obi-Wan was, right? Because she's the sister of Satine. And, Satine and Obi-Wan, we don't know what actually happened. There might have been some uglies bumping. We don't know. But they got to be around the same age, right? And look at how rough Obi-Wan looked in his, 50s and 60s. And that's got to be about where Bo-Katan's at, right? Or is my math off?
I think you're right. And I think I saw a hilarious meme where it showed, Ewan McGregor, and it showed Alec Guinness, and then it showed cartoons, Bo-Katan, and then the live action version, and it said must be the Tatooine Sons or something like that.
Yes.
Hard life living on Tatooine. That's true. But yeah, no, so far this season's been insane, man. And I know who we're all hoping for in tomorrow night's episode.
Oh yeah.
Here's my prediction, and I know it'll be after the fact. I think we're going to see her at the end of the episode, because the next week is going to be Dave Filoni's episode, and they're going to save her real episode for,
I bet you're right.
what is that? Chapter 13, right?
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Nice.
No, yeah, I completely agree. That's why I was telling Kirsty, I was like, don't get your hopes up to see Ahsoka kicking ass or anything in the next episode, because she's like, I can't wait. I'm like, no, you're going to have to wait another week. I'm sorry, but you're just going to have to. That's all there is to it.
Something that The Mandalorian has done that, for me personally, because I'm still getting into as much canon as I can. And as I mentioned on the Facebook intro, on the video on the Facebook app, on Facebook, sorry, when we were talking about everything, I've been getting into Clone Wars, and something that Mandalorian has done is made me need to watch Clone Wars and Rebels. So I may not have needed to watch Clone Wars and Rebels beforehand. It would have been better. I definitely can. So I knew what the dark saber was. I just didn't know how important it was and how cool it was, and I haven't seen it in action because I haven't seen all of Clone Wars. So when I saw it at the end of the first season, I thought, oh wait, that's cool. Wait, is that what I think it is? Wait, I'm not sure that is. Wait, hang on, what is it? And so when, you know what I mean? When I saw it and everybody else blew their minds, and I was like, whoa, wait, hang on. So what is this? So yeah, I'm still kind of fresh at this. And then now I really need to not just see Clone Wars, but Rebels as well, to really appreciate everything that Bo-Katan has to offer. It's really cool. I mean, seeing everything unfold in Clone Wars, I'm still at season 3 at the moment. It's really fantastic.
Absolutely. And these aren't going to be the only crossovers we get to, with Dave Filoni being attached to Mandalorian, and Clone Wars and Rebels were his babies, and like you were talking about the Darksaber popping up.
I love it. I love him utilizing all of canon as much as he can. Right?
Absolutely. And like you were talking about earlier, those payoffs for people to keep up with canon. Because when his TIE fighter crashed at the end of season 1, we were sitting there and that Darksaber blade came through the side of it. It took me a second to register until he was almost done cutting it, and I physically jumped off the couch and threw my hands in the air and gasped. And Kirsty's like, no way. That's not. And then it is.
I remember you said that when you said that on the podcast. Yeah, exactly. I didn't really understand how amazing that was until I'm getting into it, but hopefully I'll get there.
And I don't know about you guys, but I was never huge into the Legends books, but now with all canon, keeping up to date with all of it, watching The Mandalorian every Friday, it really I'm so engrossed into this Mandalorian culture. It's gone beyond Star Wars for me. It is this is the way, you know what I mean?
Right.
I agree.
This is the way.
They could do so much with it too. Like I think they're really setting it up where they could do so much. Like if they wanted to do a separate series, like I've always said this. I always thought that like a TV show, like this was before Mandalorian, but like something that was based off of the different houses, similar to like Game of Thrones, like it gives you that huge epic vibe of like how you can have the different houses going at each other, trying to get that
That's an
power. And like there's so many
approach, yeah,
different
man.
cultures, and like there's just so much potential there. And like the Mandalorian is really just giving now people more that light of that culture, like more fans, because like we all kind of got that vibe from Rebels, Clone Wars, and some books, but now that Mandalorian is so mainstream, now people are catching on like, oh, there's a lot more stuff here to this.
Right, and feeling like Game of Thrones. Let's talk about that crate dragon thing for a minute. And the Marshall episode, that was an insane debut for a television show. I mean, the cinematography in it and the dragon looked so good. It's just absolutely insane, the budget that they had to have had for that first episode.
I do think those cinematographers need to be paid more than actors. They are amazing. They're amazing. I know nothing about production, but I know that is unrivaled.
Oh, no, I think instead of just bringing them over to the films, everybody involved in Mandalorian needs to start dipping their toes into some of the film medium. It's insane. And we were talking about Rise of Skywalker earlier. One of the biggest things about Rise of Skywalker was, the use of fan service, and Mandalorian is using fan service perfectly and absolutely beautifully. And the perfect example is Boba Fett's jetpack. When Mando hits him with the butt of his rifle and he takes off, and he just like in Return of the Jedi when Han hit him.
Just like in Return of the Jedi. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's the way nostalgia should be done in Star Wars. That's the way callbacks need to be done. It's absolutely amazing. And that episode also finally answered a question that has been in the back of every Star Wars fan's mind for a while, and it has even been the subject of a lot of arguments. We now know that Boba Fett did indeed survive the Sarlacc pit.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, we did. We saw him at the end. Yeah, we saw him in that epilogue sort of thing, like like the scene at the end. That was fantastic.
It was done well, I thought. I mean, it was perfect, and granted, with Mandalorian, they kind of altered Cobb Vanth's origin story a little bit from Aftermath. Not horribly, but I mean, the fundamentals are still there. But there was a little bit of retconning there. But that whole episode, that whole story was just awesome. And we kept wondering, as he's wearing Boba Fett's armor, we're like, well, hell, did he get out? Like, did he really get out or not? Or what's going on? And then at the end, when that's just the perfect intro for Boba Fett, which begs the question, was he the cowboy in Chapter 5 that all you see is his feet walk up at the end of the episode and you hear the spurs? Was that him?
I think so.
The guy who takes that body, the guy who drags the body of the
Yeah, what was her name? I can't remember what her name was.
Ming-Na, yeah.
Yeah.
Ming-Na, yeah, that her.
Because at the end of that, you just see a set of feet come up with the spurs, and then that was the end of the episode. And you never had that that resolved at all.
Might be him.
Yeah,
Wait, so hang on. So is that the same? Did he get eaten by the Sarlacc in the same Sarlacc pit where that dragon is residing now?
I don't know.
Where the crate dragon had resided?
I like to think it is.
That'd be awesome.
I like to think it's the same one because he made the comment too. He's like, I've never seen an abandoned Sarlacc pit before. He's like, well, it's because the dragon ate the Sarlacc.
He's like, well, the dragon ate the Sarlacc. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to think that it was the same Sarlacc. It for me personally, it makes me feel a little bit better knowing that Sarlacc ended up getting it in the end.
And I feel like it's a matter of time till we see a flashback, or whether it's a spin-off or whatever we see, we will see that scene, I think, at some point.
Absolutely.
By the way, do you guys get this feeling like, so when shows in general, everything, Star Wars and not Star Wars and everything else, and Game of Thrones, whatever, like the show will have, all of the directors will have this sort of premise where no flashbacks, or yes, we will do flashbacks at this amount of time because this person has a deep memory, or so on. So Mandalorian didn't have those except for Mando, when he was, he was getting these memories about his sort of his encounter and his rescue, and then when they picked him up, or when the Mandalorians picked up, when he was still a little baby Din Djarin, hiding in the dumpster or whatever it was. Do you know what I mean? So do you think that we're going to get more flashbacks? I mean, the whole setting of this, like the vibe you get in Star Wars as well, is not very flashbacky. And I'd never seen a flashback before in Star Wars at all, except in Episode 9, when Luke was recalling, when somebody was recalling, you know, like the whole Luke of the whole thing about Luke training Leia a little bit and showing the power, and Leia's lightsaber showing up and everything. That was the first time I'd ever seen a flashback in Star Wars, and now I see this in Mandalorian. Maybe this is a minor point to bring up, but it's kind of interesting to me because this whole feeling of flashbacks to me is kind of overused in television, I suppose. Oh, like any director can sort of insert this backstory here, sort of thing. But what do you think? Am I delving too deep?
They used the flashbacks also when Cobb Vanth was telling his story,
Okay.
which I think if they're utilized properly, they're very powerful. I think they come off as very useful and a great tool for storytelling, especially if you're talking about a show like The Mandalorian that picks up so many years after the last time we'd visited the universe. You know what I'm saying? Because cinematically, at least on the screen, I think it as long as it's used properly, I think it's a great tool.
I think we could see it again. It's possible we could see it again in the future. I think very likely whenever we all know Ahsoka is coming around the corner here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very possible like Ahsoka's going to tell Din and the child about the Jedi, and we could get flashbacks of, you know, Clone Wars or even, you know, the Republic at that point as Ahsoka's telling the story, and it's like we're visually actually seeing this.
I think when we're going to get the most flashbacks.
Yeah, sorry, Brian, go for it.
Oh, I think when we get the most flashbacks is going to be the Obi-Wan series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be chock full. I think that's going to be this like psychological character profile on Obi-Wan, because I mean, think about what he's going through on Tatooine. You know, leaving Anakin for dead, and he watched Padme die. Now he's living in solitude. The Jedi are gone. He's watching over this young boy. He's going through so much. You know, he watched Satine die. Like, this guy is like the poster boy, Boy Scout Jedi. That if anybody was going to go to the dark side, it should have been him. And he's living in solitude, and all he has to do is think. There's going to be so many flashbacks in Obi-Wan. I hope to God, because we're getting Ahsoka in this, I think it's setting up getting a live action Ahsoka in a flashback for Obi-Wan back to the Clone Wars.
And adding on to
whether it's in Ahsoka or in Obi-Wan, do you think we'll get flashbacks from Clone Wars, but in live action series? Do you know what I mean? Like, they're going to get the scene from Clone Wars played out in live action. Do you think they'll do that?
I could see them doing it. I think it'd be cool if they did. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility, though. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it.
After season 2, I honestly, like, at this point with what they've done with all these characters, I think nothing's out of the possibility anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think that'd be great for Dave Filoni, who, you know, spent 7 years in animation of Clone Wars, to have a chance even to see a 3 to 5 minute scene that he got to film live action, maybe in this upcoming episode. I think that'd be amazing.
Oh, I'm getting chills thinking about seeing something like that. I just got goosebumps.
What if they brought Ewan and Hayden Christensen back?
Yep.
How amazing would that be?
Gosh.
And they have
so
the actress who
cool.
plays. I mean, it's there's so much potential. There's so much.
There's so much they could do, and you know, with all these little surprises we're getting here and there with the Darksaber and Ahsoka and Bo-Katan and all this other stuff popping up, and Boba Fett, there's so much the show could do that could just blow everybody away. And matter of fact, dare I say, I think at this point we've gotten more Mandalorian content than the sequel trilogy put together, right?
Roughly.
Yeah.
Is it about the same? And dare I say it's done more for Star Wars than the sequel trilogy did?
From a mainstream point of view, I think like anyone can recognize the child, and
Right.
I feel like even if they don't watch Star Wars, they know who the child is.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just thinking because I feel like Mandalorian is everything that the sequel trilogy should have been in the first place.
Yeah.
But I digress. Anyway.
No, you don't digress. Genuinely, this is a very important point. I really actually wanted to say this, and I thought it might be off topic, but yeah, since we're on this, Mandalorian has done more. I've been getting so many more questions and requests and people talking to me, friends and non-friends, about Star Wars because of The Mandalorian, more than the sequel trilogy by far. Well, seriously, people are asking about it. Go for it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's a good entry point for new fans.
It's a great entry point because it's enticing, because it pulls people in, and every episode is entertaining. Whereas the sequel trilogy, I have friends who came into Star Wars at episode 7. They were like, "Oh, cool, yeah, whatever, yeah, it's a fun movie," and then they saw episode 8 and they saw a huge drama, for and against and this and that and whatever, and they were like, "Screw it! I mean, there's no need to get upset, guys." And these guys they skipped episode 9 entirely. And they don't care. They don't care who Anakin is or Luke Skywalker is. They're like, yeah, Darth Vader, he's on all the posters. Woo. But then, genuinely, this is how lots of people here at least see that. And then there's completely new guys coming in and like, wait, hang on. So what's the Mandalorian? Wait, guys, I'm surprised you guys can actually pronounce that. Like, what are you bringing up? Like, you actually know. Not only can you say that like eloquently, but you know what he looks like and you know what Baby Yoda is, and you're actually taking the time to think about this. Yeah, but genuinely, this is a very interesting point to actually talk about. It from this perspective, not just from mainstream, but from the point of attracting fans, new fans, and servicing old fans. Genuinely, Mandalorian's awesome. I really, really can't give enough praise in that. It's enticing, it's exciting, even from a sort of new perspective.
Plus the fact that it's readily available in your home, you know what I mean? Yes. It's on Disney Plus. Yes. You don't have to go out and try to find it. It's right there. So I think it's a great jumping off point. And so far, and you're right. I think it's gotten a lot of people into Star Wars for the first time. Because I know people that come in and out of my co-op that they're like, oh, okay, he's a Star Wars nut. Don't worry about it. And then, they go watch Mandalorian and they're like, oh, and then they start asking questions. You know what I mean? Like, well, what was up with the black lightsaber? Oh, you don't know about that. Oh, I got to tell you about this. You got to watch this, and it's a great jumping off point. So, looking forward to what what the rest of this season has in store, man. It's going to be a hell of a ride, especially considering what the first season was. I'm so excited to watch tomorrow night's episode. Speaking of the sequel trilogy, we also got news not too long ago, actually. In the last couple weeks, George Lucas's idea for the sequel trilogy actually involved Darth Maul and Darth Talon. So anybody here read a whole bunch of Legend stuff that had Darth Talon in it, or no? No. No? Oh man. Okay.
I'm familiar with the name, but I've never read anything.
Same. See, I know her name, but I've never read anything with her in it. Hang on a second. I'm going to look up and kind of see what the story behind her is in Legends, because I'm curious. But we know George Lucas was going to bring back Darth Maul as the big baddie. In the sequel trilogy, which is really, they were going to displace her timeline wise too. This says Darth Talon was a female Lethan Twi'lek who became a Sith Lord in Darth Krayt's 1 Sith in 137 ABY. Talon was styled with black Sith tattoos covering her body, including her head and Leku. Each tattoo had been earned in ritual combat and inscribed by Krayt himself. So I don't know how that would have translated into a sequel trilogy.
I think it would have been awesome to see Darth Maul back because, in Phantom Menace, what did he have in total? Maybe 6 to 10 minutes worth of screen time. And it would have been awesome to see him continue on in the prequels. And I know we get the Clone Wars, of course. But I think Lucas probably enjoyed working with Filoni to bring him back for Clone Wars, as he was maybe pondering the idea of what could a 7, 8, and 9 look like again, maybe a decade ago. And I think just the fact of, imagine if we would have had a trilogy focused on Maul leading an empire of his own and having his own apprentice. I think that would have been really fascinating to see how that would have played out.
Yeah, especially.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah.
Especially considering, how he's done with these crime syndicates and how badly he wanted Ezra as an apprentice and everything we've seen in Rebels so far, and even his cameo in Solo. Spoiler alert, if you guys haven't seen Solo. But yeah, no, Maul's one of those characters. I think they really could have built off of him in a way, especially putting him up against the classic trilogy, like the A-Team.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? They kind of see that dynamic of those two kind of being pitted against each other.
Well, I think it could be very interesting to see what that would have been like. I kind of come from a different angle where I don't necessarily agree with how they did the whole Palpatine thing in the sequel trilogy. I think it was executed poorly, but I think if you put Maul as the villain of this trilogy, I think it has potential to then kind of put him more, especially with this being the sequel, being this is part of the nine movie arc. You kind of put Maul more in that forefront of who the big main villain is. You kind of like start looking at, oh, Maul, maybe Maul was actually the big bad villain. Maybe he was. Maybe in Lucas's mind he was. But I always, I don't know. I always see it as it's Emperor Palpatine. It's Sidious. Like he's been doing this, even before Episode 1. And I think by putting Maul there, I think it could kind of muddy the water. I mean, maybe it could have done well. And I think he definitely has some interesting story with the syndicates and such. But I think that's its own story on its own. And I think Sidious, like even though done poorly as it was, in my opinion, I think it's better than having Maul. But that's my take.
I mean, I completely, of course, I agree with your point. Like, Sidious was not done well, and it could have been done much better, and the execution was poor. I think with Maul, the idea is the agenda. The agenda Darth Maul had was quite cool. In Episode 1, everything we see is about, from Maul's perspective, the only few lines he had were about him speaking of revenge. So he was fully bought into the Sith agenda. The whole idea of like he's trying to embody this sort of legacy of the Sith. If he was that powerful with the Force and he was trying to embody it, and then he may have sort of failed, and then he sort of redeemed himself, a sort of redemption story with the underground, and then he sort of pulled himself back up, that would have been really cool. I agree with your point where it seemed a little bit weaker because still, I mean, Palpatine is still the Emperor, right? He was still Darth frickin' Sidious.
Mhm.
But, Darth Maul, he had a lot of potential. He was a super scary baddie, and he could have taken things to a sort of twisted level. We could have seen a side of him nobody saw. But yeah, the Darth Maul, that whole thing. And, of course, seeing him face off against the OGs or, like the guys, the main sort of, the main protagonist, which we would have loved to see. Yes, basically the beacons of light, right? These are the beacons of light. These are the guys that are sort of, rebirthing the Jedi, rebirthing all of the defense of the light in this new aftermath of the finding the balance. Wait, hang on. So is Darth Maul helping? Is the battle between Darth Maul and now Luke's potentially new dojo balancing things out? Are they still finding out who the chosen one is? Or wait, is the chosen one come and gone, and this is the balance? This is the balance where Darth Maul. So that's really cool to actually think about, genuinely.
I think it would have been cool to see Jedi and Sith both existing at the same time and knowing of each other, but not necessarily out to just destroy each other, but kind of like just rival gangs. Kind of like when you come across another gang member, you're going to fight, but you still kind of keep that kind of, I don't want to say truce, that's not the word I'm looking for, but that kind of respect for each other.
The face-off, yeah, like sort of respectful face-off.
Right,
sort of thing.
right. That kind of unspoken agreement where I won't mess with you if you don't mess with me, but if our paths cross, it's game on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the gang pact. Yeah.
Right.
And I'm still hoping that we do get a chance to see Maul, whether it be in a Disney Plus show or something, because there's still a part of his story that has not been told. And I just want to see Maul off the chains, because one of my favorite Maul stories, if you guys remember, a couple years ago, there was a comic from Marvel where it was right before Phantom Menace, and he was trying to get his first kill of a Jedi. Yes. And Sidious kept holding him back, saying, "We're not ready to do our plan yet." And I just seeing his rage kind of come to the forefront, and now maybe to see him train Kira, like leading these syndicates, and how he falls and loses that power before Rebels. I think there's still a major chapter that needs to be told somewhere in his timeline.
They put him there in Solo because it was supposed to be the start of something.
Oh,
they have a plan. They have a story that they want to tell, and I think Disney Plus is the best way. I think it's a great tool to tell that story with, whether it be a television series or
exactly.
Or
I do think Lucasfilm is getting much better at this sort of referring to something now, so you can create something larger, maybe a few episodes or a few items later. I do think that this is actually really cool. It's a very powerful mode of sort of like calling back things. It sort of makes an intertwined web of events, and it calls back different things. So if you watch the movies back to back or together, you'll be like, oh wait, so that's where he came in. Oh wait, so in The Mandalorian he refers to this, and so on. I really think that that's quite important, hopefully. And I'm hoping I'm hoping, just as Steven said, that we do see Darth Maul. It's not over yet. I'm sure that they understand that he is the coolest character that people genuinely look at. They're like, oh yeah, visually, this guy is unbelievable. And we want to see more of him. And Ray Parks, isn't it? Is his first name is Ray, right? Ray
Yeah.
Parks?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The choreographer for Darth Maul. He's not done yet. I mean, he's getting on with age, as is the law of nature. But hopefully we can still see some more of him, because he is fantastic. That man has wushu in his blood.
Yeah.
Wushu is the kind of martial art that Samurai Jack had trained in a cartoon, and he's been doing it in real life. So damn, this guy is unbelievable. Just training in a dojo in California on his own, for all of a sudden to display the most badass character in the entire Star Wars universe. Man, that guy is amazing, and we need to see him display need to see him display Darth Maul again. It's fantastic.
Even from a business point of view, dropping little nuggets like that here and there, and then telling everybody, or even showing in a trailer for a Disney Plus series, seeing Maul pop up. If you're doing a Han Solo series, it's a sequel to the films. Well, there's some people that only watch the films, and when they say, oh, well, I want to see what happened with him now, then it's going to get them into some of the other canon stuff. So from a business point of view, it also makes sense to kind of drop nuggets in different mediums to get people to start picking up other mediums. So...
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I still, lots of people think that the Mandalorian is Boba Fett or somebody like a sibling or a cousin. Hey, guys, it's not. Wait, hang on. So are you actually interested in this because you thought this was Boba Fett? And they're like, well, yeah. I thought, oh, okay, wait, that's interesting. Okay, so why don't you just watch it and figure out that actually it's a completely different thing, and it might be even cooler than you thought in the first place. So yeah, no, exactly as you say, like it's a different concept entirely, but it's still the whole premise of, yeah, you saw something that you liked here. This is the expansion point over there. So let's look into it. You're absolutely right.
Well, let's keep moving right on along. Let's talk about some of that more expanded canon. We've got a book announcement that just came down the line. I think a week ago, guys. The Thrawn Ascendancy, Greater Good. This will be the sequel to Chaos Rising, Book 2 in the trilogy. Steven, I know you said you finished Chaos Rising.
I finished Chaos Rising about a week or so ago, and I enjoyed it. I really liked, without any spoilers right now, how it did kind of make a nice connection to Thrawn Alliance from 3 or 4 years ago. And so, Thrawn's a character I didn't know much about from the Legends, but, seeing him in Rebels, seeing his story play out in multiple, now 2 trilogies. I liked Chaos Rising as an introduction, and I can't wait to see kind of where it goes in just a couple months when Greater Good comes out.
Right. I think I'm like 2/3 through Chaos Rising right now. Really enjoying it quite a bit. I'm trying to truck through it as quickly as I can, because now I've got, from a certain point of view, Empire sitting on my shelf just waiting to be graced. But yeah, so far this Chaos Rising, I'm really digging this trilogy so far. I'm really excited that they're doing trilogies, that they're actually announcing trilogies, several years out now, instead of just saying, down the line, oh, here's book 2 of, a sequel to this book or a sequel to that one. They're actually announcing and planning these trilogies out. And I think that's translating from film to book. It's easier to plan out, I think, a trilogy of books than it is films. But I think maybe Lucasfilm is finally getting it through their heads that they need to start planning stuff in the long run and doing this long track. So, you've got the Aftermath trilogy. Now you're going to have the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. Now we're going to have this Thrawn trilogy. We have the other Thrawn trilogy that's already come out. And having Timothy Zahn writing canon, oh God, him, Claudia Gray, you can't go wrong with those two writing anything in canon.
I mean, I'm really excited. I am really excited to read Thrawn. Like, you have no idea.
Which ones have you read so far?
I'm sorry. So
have you read any of the Thrawn stuff at all yet?
No, not yet. I've started Tarkin. I started Tarkin earlier this week. I want to do this a little bit chronologically in canon. So I've started Tarkin, and it's really cool. Like, genuinely, I love Tarkin. He's one of my favorite characters ever. I mean, I have this perspective, and other people might differ with my perspective on this, but I love the villains in Star Wars. Genuinely, in any genre or any sort of, I really like to see the baddie. Not just because, I mean, perhaps I want to be with the baddie, but I really do. I mean, yeah, I definitely love the Sith, and I would consider myself a Sith more than I would a Jedi. But I mean, I would still, I just, I would still love to analyze the baddies, you know, the villains much more than I like to look into the good natured people, because I want to see what drives them in each universe, because that sets up the universe. You know, the good and bad and the sort of different motives that come in. That is what sets it up for me. So I'm reading Tarkin first, and then I was gonna go into Lost Stars, but perhaps I'll do Thrawn trilogy first. I'm not sure. You guys are gonna have to help me out. I'm seeing shaking heads here on the videos.
Lost Stars.
Lost Stars
Lost
is
Stars
good.
first. All right,
Read
yeah,
Lost
yeah,
Stars.
sure, sure.
Well, I don't know. Should we make him read Lost Stars last? Because after Lost Stars, everything else just seems eh.
I'm gonna turn into you guys are beanie. I'm gonna turn into a guinea pig there, guys. You're gonna experiment with me.
It's dude, Lost Stars is good. I think that's the universal kind of unanimous sitting right now with that book. I think Lost Stars is the gold standard.
I've had a few people on the Star Wars Egypt fan page saying that they didn't like Claudia Gray that much as a writer, and I wanted to say that earlier, but it's different perspectives. You know, I'll bring up their comments on another time. I'll bring up their comments on another podcast, and then maybe next episode I'll ask them individually, make sure that I sort of get their comments in. We can talk about this, but but they definitely love. I mean, I haven't seen anyone so far, not even on blogs, who's genuinely hated the Zahn, you know, who's not liked his books at all. But some people have had some pretty heavy negative reviews for Claudia Gray. But even Timothy Zahn, like when I've seen notes on his books, I've learned a lot just from the notes, just from reading on his, like, I've learned a lot from the perspective of the Force, just from reading how Timothy Zahn has sort of projected how his characters in his books look at the Force. So imagine what I'm going to learn, how I'm going to enjoy reading the books themselves. Mm-hmm. It's just really cool.
That first Thrawn trilogy that they wrote for canon is absolutely awesome. It's really, really cool. And they even did a 6 or 7 issues of, it was an adaptation of the first Thrawn book. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if it was 6 or 7 issues, but it was a really, for an abridged version of a novel, it wasn't half bad. It hit all the notes that I think needed to be hit with the novel. And it kind of makes you wonder if that's something they're going to end up doing later on down the road, do comic adaptations of novels. Because we know they've done Lost Stars as a manga, and I think, didn't they do Leia, Princess of Alderaan as a manga?
Yes,
I think so.
I think they did. I could be wrong. But it begs the question, are we going to end up seeing comic adaptations of novels somewhere down the line?
I think it would bring in maybe a different audience, because we know not everyone reads every novel, every comic, but if they see it in a medium that they enjoy more, it might get them interested in, they still get the story, even if they read it in a different context. Or even, could you even imagine like an animated miniseries or an animated movie on Disney Plus of one of these books? Like, that would just be another way for people to get to watch it that say, oh, I don't want to read these. You know what I mean?
Not everybody has the time to sit down and read these books, you know, and you can buzz through a comic book in 4 or 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
look at how they did
break it down for them.
Look at the Siege of Mandalore, you know, season 7 of Clone Wars. If you could make a 2-hour movie that way that adapted one of these novels, like, your mind would just be blown at the visuals of it.
Absolutely. I would love, can you see, you do something like
Bloodline.
that.
Oh,
geez. I was going to say Bloodline or Lost Stars, like one of those two. Bloodline would be great, because that's that political thriller kind of genre. That would be absolutely perfect. That would lend itself really well to a series, especially with the giant, I don't want to say spoiler, but the giant like revelation that's in Bloodline to the galaxy. You know what I'm saying? That would be so cool to build up to and then see the fallout from and actually see it. But Lost Stars would be a cool one too, to actually see scenes from the classic trilogy from these other two people's point of view. You know, you see Leia doing her speech on Hoth when Thane's there, or, you know, or see Alderaan explode again from the point of view of the Death Star from somebody else's point of view, and kind of see how they emotionally deal with it and why they went through the thought process they did to leave the Empire. You know what I'm saying? Like stuff like that. It's that'd be really, really cool to see on screen.
Without having read either book, I know the event you're referring to in Bloodline, and I'm more excited to build up to Bloodline to that than I am to Lost Stars. The reason being, for me to really love the Lost Stars, that perspective, that first of all, what you're saying is perfect. Like that sort of build up from a different perspective to watch it unfold and yet to be a part of it at the same time and to grow with that, that's fantastic. But in order for me to love that, I have to really love the original trilogy and what happened there. I have to really not just adore it, but appreciate how important it is within the Star Wars, let's say, timeline. But within the Bloodline sort of drama, that is a really intricate story within itself. I'm basically gonna read both of them anyway, so I'll tell you how it goes. But yeah, it's pretty enticing. But it's funny to hear you say it like that, Brian. Like when you say, yeah, you're reading the build up and you're seeing it yourself for Bloodline, like the revelation. You call it revelation rather than a sort of climax or a spoiler. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear that, and then also compared with when Lost Stars, when you watch it unfold, but you're living it and you're being a part of it, that's going to be cooler, perhaps. Man, yeah, you guys are building this up for me even more.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous that he gets to read these.
Clone Wars enhances the prequel trilogy so much, and even I would say Rebels to an extent enhances leading up to Rogue One and A New Hope. And I think like that's one thing that the sequel trilogy needs, because Resistance really didn't hit the mark with it the way that it maybe should have, with a different, maybe audience or, demographic, whatever. But imagine like if they did adapt some of these books like Bloodlines, or what was the one that came out leading up to Rise of Skywalker last year?
Resistance Reborn.
Resistance Reborn.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. But if you adapted that, like, I feel like there's so many fans that saw 7, 8, and 9 and didn't get the same value out of it because they didn't know the revelation we're talking about with Bloodline. They didn't understand, why is Leia no longer in the government? What's going on here? And so the fans of the books get so much more out of it. But if you could adapt it into a, animated movie or a miniseries, more people on Disney Plus are going to, I think, watch that than read the books.
It lends more weight to the sequel trilogy, knowing that history. And didn't, correct me if I'm wrong, Bloodline came out after Force Awakens, right?
Yes.
I thought so, yeah. So, because during Bloodline, isn't Luke still running around with Ben in the galaxy somewhere? Like, you never see them in the book. They're never physically there. It doesn't cut to them and they're doing, but aren't they, doesn't she say that they're out running around, still being Jedi and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
And not just that revelation either, which obviously was like the big thing in that book, which for the most part, the books don't normally have like galaxy shattering events happening in them. And this one did. This is one of those that I consider essential reading. But seeing Leia, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it for Usif. Seeing the fallout from it, especially within the family. That's all I'm going to say. Within the family, and
seeing
kind
it
of
from
the way
Ben's point of view now,
Yes.
like with Luke, and he gets the revelation.
yeah.
That everyone has kept something from him. You know what I mean?
but how he finds out too, because
Ben's point of view is really
was it all over
important.
the news?
yeah,
the media,
nobody
all of
told
that?
him. Nobody
Yeah.
physically told him what was going on. He found out with
Exactly.
everybody else, and I can see that being one of those seeds that was planted in his head to really drive home and turn him, to the dark side, especially after what happened, after finding that out, and then the whole thing with Luke and which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But all of that, like, you can kind of see why Ben went down the way he did. So yeah, guys, if you haven't read Bloodline, that is another novel that, like I said, that I think everybody will agree with me that is essential reading. And it's such a good read too. It's such a good read. But anyway, speaking of novels, we got one more to talk about before we put a beloved character on the stand. From a certain point of view, Empire Strikes Back is now available. 40 short stories from 40 different points of view, recapping the Empire Strikes Back. One of you guys, was it JG? Did you get it before anybody else did?
Yeah, I got it Saturday before it released.
I hate you for that. I absolutely hate you for that. Have you gotten through it yet, or where
I'm
you
about
at?
3/4 of the way through.
3/4. What do you think so far?
For those who don't know much about the From a Certain Point of View books, would you guys mind explaining? Like, is it canon? Is it not canon? What's it comprised of?
They're canon, but it's one of those things where like details are fuzzy. It's kind of like the way Pablo Hidalgo explains it. the whole Han and Greedo thing is a good example. What's canon is that
Who
two
shot
people,
first?
yeah,
Okay.
what's canon is that two people went into that booth and only one walked out. So who shot first isn't necessarily canon. So all this
Depends
stuff
on from a certain point of
from
view.
a certain point of view, whether it happened or not. So, because when people start telling recounts of a story that they saw, details get exaggerated, or they're made out to look like the hero of the story or something like that. So we know how the Empire Strikes Back went down, but now we're going to see it from the point of view of like bystanders. That's basically what the from a certain point of view novels are. So
it's fantastic. Like I'm actually enjoying this one a lot more than the New Hope one for some reason.
I'm glad you said that.
It's really interesting. Like the stories just seem different. I can't explain it. That's just my personal take. There's one story I obviously won't spoil. That's written by Amy Ratcliffe. That's about a propagandist journalist. That's really well done. It's my favorite so far. And just to see that story, especially because it was Amy's first fiction writing in Star Wars, it was really well done.
Nice.
That's definitely my highlight so far. And I think it was also something I noticed was, I won't go into specifics, but there's one movie in the Disney era that is referenced a lot. One of the Star Wars Disney movies is referenced a lot in this book. So
that's narrowed down. That narrows it down.
It's about 4 or 5 movies. So
oh no, I'm looking forward to it. I've got it on my shelf. I can't wait to get through it. And honestly, I'm glad you said you liked it better than A New Hope version, because I really liked the A New Hope one, but we just spent so much time in the cantina that it drug on, which is weird because that was the part I was looking forward to the most of that book, was all the different points of view from the cantina. But then you're like, okay, cool, enough of the cantina. And then you flip the page and it's another cantina story. And you're like, all right, just get through this one. And then it got to the point I was counting pages to see how many pages I had to read to get through the next one.
I will preface, just so that you set yourself up properly, you do spend a lot of time on Hoth, and I've heard you spend a lot of time on Bespin. So I will just keep that in mind as you go into this book to set yourself up with that mindset.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's available now, guys. If you want to go check it out, definitely do so. I'm like I said, I'm really looking forward to diving into it, which I think we can all safely say now that 3 years from now, we'll be sitting here talking about, from a certain point of view, the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll still be talking by the time we get to the prequels in however many years.
Hopefully, yeah.
Brian, before we go on to the trial,
Yeah.
There was one other piece of news this week that I wanted to
bring
bring up. And then we can save this for maybe another episode closer to Christmas, but I know that they put out the new Lego Star Wars Holiday Special, and I don't know if you guys had a chance to watch it. It had a lot of little
gonna
Easter
watch it tomorrow. Yeah,
It was a cute little 45 minutes and lots of Easter eggs. I know it's not canon, but it was still a fun watch. And again, maybe we could do an episode later in the December about maybe the original holiday special and the new one.
Oh God, yeah, we can we could talk about the original holiday special. That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh God, no, that Lego one, that was cute. I mean, there were parts where I had to pause it because I was laughing.
Mm-hmm. There were some jokes. Yeah.
There was some good, and there was some good adult humor too that was in there. I shouldn't say adult humor because that comes off as like dirty sexual stuff. It's not that. There's humor in there for us older guys, that when a certain thing, who here hasn't seen it yet?
I haven't. I see it tomorrow.
Okay.
I see it tomorrow, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, so
we'll talk next week about it then.
Yeah, I don't want to ruin anything, but Steven, that Max Rebo joke,
oh my God,
was freaking hilarious. That's where I had to pause it because I was laughing so hard. I'm sorry.
Seeing different characters or the same character from different eras interact, what made me laugh.
Yeah, it was absolutely awesome. It just there's parts in there you guys are gonna love it. It's funny, but the way they did it too is it's something you can watch any time of the year. It doesn't have to be around Christmas time. You know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, it's Life Day is like their Christmas, but you can watch it any time because of where the majority of the story takes place. You know what I mean?
Huge props to Lego movies in general. Lego Batman was incredible, and this is actually I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, you're gonna love it, man. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. And I feel like it's going to be, well, maybe it won't be along those lines. I was going to say it's going to be like Nick Albers in our chat when he watches Mandalorian. Like he pops in for 30 seconds to say OMFG and then pops back out for 3 hours. I'm like, what's wrong? What's going on? And then he comes back, Mandalorian. Oh, gotcha. Cool. I don't think it's going to be that galaxy shattering for you, but I am looking forward to seeing what you guys thought of it. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up though, Steven. Yeah, because I didn't even think about putting that on the show notes. All right, so that's going to do it for news. Let's get into the main topic of this episode. This is what we've been talking about for, how long have we been talking about doing this now? A couple months? Few months? This is the trial of Luke Skywalker. We are putting Luke Skywalker from The Last Jedi on trial, and I guess indirectly Disney as well because of the way that, they were handled. Now, the way they handled him. I know Luke Skywalker, the way he was quote-unquote handled in the class or in the sequel trilogy has been a point of contention for most of the fan base. It's kind of split down the center. People were happy with the way he was handled. People were pissed off with the way he was handled. Some people said it was great. Some people said it was poetic. Some said it was an injustice and a travesty, and they tore their shirts and were screaming at the sky. And that's kind of, where we stand with the Luke Skywalker thing. To the point where I think some of it was kind of retconned too in Rise of Skywalker. And kind of they tried to make people kind of forget about the way he handled things with him saying, he was wrong and all this stuff. But we're not going to take any of that into account. We're going to pretend like The Last Jedi just happened. He just died. We don't know he's a Force ghost yet. He's not going to come back and say, I was wrong. We don't know about that yet. But each person here on this panel, on each co-host is going to go through. I'm going to start with you guys first before I say anything about it. I want you guys to each go through and give me your pros and your cons for the way he was handled and what you think was done right, what you think could have been done better, and we'll just kind of see where it goes from there. So which one do you guys want to start? I think, Usef, you were supposed to be on the prosecution side, so we'll start with you. What about Luke Skywalker's handling and treatment in the sequel trilogy were you going to go after?
Okay, cool. Here we go. So you say this in a different particular term. You say handling. So I'll talk about this in that sense. Sorry, excuse me. I'll talk about this in that sense, the sense of being in him, Luke Skywalker being handled, and also in his free will sort of thing. So it's not just him being a character, but also how he's portrayed.
Right on.
Now the thing is, so pros and cons, without going into too much detail first, because we have, this is what we're going to do at this point all together at once. Firstly, here we have a person who we all greatly admire. This is just the background, and I have to mention it. I know we all know who Luke is, but I have to say it since I am on the prosecution side. He is a person who's been through a whole lot, a shitload. Excuse my French. He's not just been through hell and back with the whole with finding out who his father is, with him being sucked into an entire rebellion, which is galactic scale, everything. But also he has now, more recently, with everything that's gone on with Leia, with everything that we just discussed in Bloodline, with everything else, he has now been thrust into the position, which was inevitable for him, to be the sole person responsible for sort of rebirthing the Jedi. And that is, of course, a huge weight on his shoulders, undoubtedly. I cannot, there's no contradiction for that. So the pros here really stem from him being, he's facing a huge amount of pressure with not a lot, there aren't really many role models here to look at. He doesn't have a lot to go on other than his instinct, perhaps some research, and whatever little he has been taught. So the pros here are that he's acting as any human would. These are the pros, in my opinion. And I'm interested to see the pros from everyone else. But the cons, man, the cons. This person has just, he's not just a person. He's a Jedi. He's not just a Force-sensitive Jedi. He's the lineage of one of the most powerful people to have ever, come into contact with the Force. He has utilized the Force. Luke, I mean, he has utilized the Force to such a degree where he's sort of been in tune with it to make sure that he is above the sort of sedition which may have led him to become Sith like his father did at one point. He has in The Last Jedi, when he teaches Rey these points about the hubris of a Jedi, these are all very, very, very important points, and yet he in himself succumbs to hubris. He succumbs to the fact where, okay, so these are the challenges and I was not able to meet these challenges and therefore I am not worthy. That in itself is not just hubris. That in itself is admitting failure and succumbing to it. And that is why Yoda has to come back and teach him and say, failure, yes, failure, the greatest teacher failure is. Okay, I understand that there's a redeeming point. And of course, for the story, it's fantastic. But let's not talk about the story, the actual story at the moment and why that's good or bad. I'm talking about him as a character, about what he went through and why he could have done better. No, Luke could have been the beacon. I mean, rather than him being the spark at the end, he was the spark, like the fire of the rebellion, or he was going to help them be the spark, and then he ended up giving his life to do that. Why wasn't he the beacon that led the rebellion? He should have been that, not just could have, but should have. Of course it was difficult, and he lost Ben Solo to Snoke. There has to be a balance. There has to be he can't just be the good guy and leading these younglings, these new younglings into this new beacon and teaching them how to be how to be Jedi and how to be in tune with the light. They have to eventually. There has to be a dark side somewhere, and it was unfortunate enough to be within his own nephew. And perhaps that's what hit him most. Of course it is. It's not just that one of his pupils, one of his most powerful pupils, one that he perhaps didn't foresee turning that darkly. Darkly, that's not a word. Turning dark that hard. But for him to really see that, of course it hit him hard. That doesn't mean that you forego all of your teachings and the fact that you can't now face this new, what is now an enemy. How do you decide if it's an enemy? That's what you as a Jedi need to do. That is your challenge, not simply using your light side abilities. Yeah, I'm not sure how long the time is I've got on this, but this is essentially the core of my argument and my protest against Luke. And I've got many more, obviously, details to go on. I hope I made my point across quite clear. Yeah, he's not, ultimately speaking, Luke in episode 8 is not a role model I would cheer for.
Fair enough. I think that was very well said for an opening statement. Holy crap. All right, so
it was emphatic, but I'm not sure how detailed it was.
No, that's
crash me down.
That was good. That was a real good opening. Damn, you did that way better than I thought that anybody was gonna do. That was good. So Steven or John, which one of you guys want to rebuttal him?
Oh, I guess it's me. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So can you just narrow down what was your main primary point there, Yusuf? What was your main thing?
Okay.
Just
all
one
right.
sentence.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My whole speech was
no, you're good. No, it was it blew me away. I was just the whole time I was taking notes. I was like, what on? I was like, oh, I did not come prepared. Oh gosh.
Okay, so my main thing, genuinely, is that Luke, having gone through the trials that he has gone through, they are trials, and he has succeeded in them. So many different adventures he's gone on to show how powerful he is. At one point, he was so strong, and he was so, okay, maybe strong is not the right word here, but he was so, he was such a leader, and he was so powerful that even the enemy considered him a sort of godlike figure. When he was fighting the remnants of the Empire after the whole face-off with Emperor Darth Sidious and Darth Vader, for him to then succumb to this failure so hard that not only does he exile himself. Exile is such a heavy thing. Exile is not like we think of today. Exile is not, it's not just like, oh, you have betrayed us and you're a traitor, so go live over there in seclusion. You are demoted and deranked, which is in itself a horrible thing. But he has exiled himself entirely to the point where he cuts himself off from the Force. This submission and withdrawal, that's my main point.
So I think it's very easy. I know you brushed this aside a little bit, but you said, and it was brought up a little bit that like, oh, he's like human and like that could be like a pro or not. But I think that is something very, very important to look at, is at the end of the day, like Luke Skywalker is a human, and humans, you know, we are flawed. We make mistakes, some much more serious and much more deeper. You could even look at in the context of Star Wars, go back to the considered one of the most, if not the most powerful Jedi, Yoda. Look in the Clone Wars. There's moments where Yoda has extreme amounts of like doubt, depression, where he goes through like these trials and such. It's been a while since I've watched it, so I know people will correct me, but I know that Yoda has these immense amounts. Like, he doesn't necessarily, I would not say Yoda fails, but Yoda himself hits, I would not say rock bottom, but very dark lows.
A low point, yeah.
Yes, so I don't think it's out of the stretch of imagination to see someone like Luke, who he's coming off this immense amount of high. He's coming off of basically redeeming his father, basically starting to reignite this new Jedi Order. And all of a sudden, everything around him is crashing down. We talked about the whole thing in Bloodline. We talked about now these premonitions that are happening. To go from this extreme high to then everything, your world around you, to come crashing down. Of course, the amount of the human around you is just going to instantly like want to like seclude yourself, because you're going to want to protect yourself. You're going to want to like, that's just a human nature, is to not want to get hurt and to protect yourself and to protect others, especially if he blames himself. He sees how much pain Leia's going through, how much pain the family and the people around him, his friends. He's not want to cause that even more. So to even not allow any more pain and hurt, he just separates himself to cause that. And I think any human would. And I think to say that Luke was not a hero, I think, because ultimately in The Last Jedi he was, because they show it with Tamari Briggs at the end of The Last Jedi when he holds up the broom. Like, that is like one of my favorite characters in the sequel trilogy. I know that's so silly, but it's just because of what he stands for and that hope. It's because of that legacy of Luke Skywalker. Like, if we don't see that little child at the end, then yeah, I say that like Luke was like a major disappointment. But because of that boy at the end, when he holds up the broom and it's acting as a lightsaber and he's looking out to the star, it's because of that mark, that legacy that Luke has left.
I think that was a really
Absolutely.
good
I'm gonna
defense. Yeah.
Back off of what JG said, because I agree. Like, when you mention that it's from a human point of view, I think that's the best argument we can really make from this point of view, because, you know, as a teacher myself, like the fact that Luke lost his entire student population, like that is the most devastating thing I could ever imagine. Like, the fact that he lost everything that he was building up, not just his nephew to the dark side, but then he lost the lives of everyone that he was training. He was trying to rebuild, you know, this amazing Jedi Order and try to fix the faults from the prequel trilogy's Jedi Order. And like, he looked at himself as a failure. So the fact that he left civilization and isolated himself to this very first, you know, Jedi temple on Ahch-To, he wanted to start fresh himself. He needed to just disconnect from the Force. And I don't view that as a negative thing. I view that as, like JJ said, it would be the human thing. Like, if you lost everything around you, you would have to find a way to kind of cut yourself off and try to find a way to come back into the light, bring that balance back. And I think, like, you know, Disney, when they handled him, they didn't keep him there throughout the entire Last Jedi. They kept him there for most of the Last Jedi to show that he was still struggling with this. But I think at the end, like Yusuf said, whenever he talks to Yoda, he's still a student. You know, he might have been a great Jedi Master, but no matter how great you are as a master or an expert on something, you're never done learning. If you're done learning, what's the point? You know, and you know, we as humans should always try to learn new things. So the fact that Yoda was still able to give this guy lessons, you know, he's still learning, and the fact that it was able to open up his mind to one final lesson as he was a human and that's alive, he could then become, in my opinion, one of the most powerful scenes I've ever seen, Force projecting himself across the galaxy, which again, we've never seen anything that powerful, I don't think, in a Force user. Seeing the confrontation with Ben or Kylo on Crate, and like, that was what we wanted to see. You know, we were hoping he would pop up in a big fight in Force Awakens, and we didn't get that. We just saw him for the last 5 seconds standing on top of the cliff. So the fact that Disney did give us what we wanted in such an awesome battle sequence, as Kylo's yelling more, 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 and all the, fires are coming down at him, and he's still standing there, and you're sitting in the theater like, how is he there? And they're leaving these little hints about it. I think Disney handled it well, and you know what? Death is a part of life. It's part of the journey, and the fact that they had to kill him off, would I have loved to have seen Luke continue on his journey? I would have, but at the same time, I'm at peace with the way that he passed away. It was a character moment it's part of his story. And, without going more into Rise of Skywalker, that was, for the moment, the end of the story that we had then 2 years to kind of deal with and see if he would pop up again.
You guys are making me look like freaking like amateur hour over here, because I'm like scribbling notes while you guys are talking, like trying to, because look, I'm on the side where I defend him. I've always, and actually this podcast has lost listeners over that. I've always defended what they did with Luke, and I should say how Luke was, how Luke reacted to everything going on. Kind of what everything you guys said about, being human and going through all this stuff. Before the sequel trilogy came along, you had the EU novels, the Legends novels, and they had Luke as this like godlike Messiah Jedi that ended up becoming so powerful he didn't even need a lightsaber anymore. And, almost like the Neo, if you would, of the Star Wars universe. And one of the things that made Luke Skywalker stand out to me as a kid was how relatable he was. And, he was the farm boy that wanted to get out and go see the universe, and he wanted to, get off the farm and go on this adventure and see what was out there. And me personally, growing up, I wanted to get out into the world, and that was something that I could really relate to. I can't relate to a godlike, all-powerful Messiah Jedi. I can't relate to that. I don't have that kind of power. It'd be cooler than shit if I did, but I don't have that kind of power. And so when they took him off that pedestal and really, because what they did was humanized him so much in this sequel trilogy, I think it's a good thing for the character personally. And, him going into exile, that was the only thing that was the only example that had ever been set for him. When Obi-Wan and Yoda tried to stop everything from getting messed up, and actually they had a hand in everything going wrong as well. Obi-Wan and Yoda they were blamed to be put on their shoulders for the way the Empire was able to rise. Yoda, as soon as he lost his battle, into exile I must go. And then, Obi-Wan, obviously Obi-Wan had a mission. He was there to watch over Luke, but he still went into exile. He still hid. Why he didn't change his last name and he changed his first name, nobody knows. But that was the only example set for him. And even Rey in Rise of Skywalker, that was the only example set for her. When she thinks everything is lost, she goes into exile on the same planet for some reason.
We said we weren't going to mention
I know. I'm sorry.
Because that plays into my argument.
We can go there. We can go there.
I promise you it does. We can? All right. Anyway, keep going. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
But that's just an example of how the student will always watch, the teacher, and it's kind of the monkey see, monkey do kind of thing, And, that kind of stuck with me. And everybody being mad about Luke not living up to what they thought he was going to live up to proves his point, in my opinion, because he talks about how he was a legend and how, but because he was Luke Skywalker, he failed. Well, how do we feel? How do we feel right now? We feel like Luke failed because he didn't live up to that legend. We kind of feel the same way Rey had to have felt when she found him. And, she talks about how Luke Skywalker was a myth, and she'd heard all these stories about Luke Skywalker. And when she finally meets the man, he's not everything she wanted him to be. It kind of puts us in her shoes as well. And, I just, even Luke said, I think they used this line in the trailer for Last Jedi for a reason. When Luke says, this is not going to go the way you think it's going to go. And and everybody was upset with the way he was handled in Last Jedi, but they set us up for it in Force Awakens. They told us that Luke ran away from everything. And what were we, like what Luke says in Last Jedi, what did you think was going to happen? That I was just going to go with you and go face down the whole First Order with a laser sword? And I feel like he wasn't saying that to Rey. He was saying it to the audience as well. We were supposed to be right there in her shoes, experiencing that with her for the first time and being surprised when he throws the lightsaber over his shoulder and like, wait, what? Why would he do that? We were supposed to be going with Rey in that story. So that's kind of where my mind is on the whole defending Luke Skywalker thing.
All right. There's a lot to unpack here, of course, which is what we're trying to do slowly, bit by bit, maybe not entirely, but at least within the part we're focused on. To sort of, I'm gonna choose a few things to go on with you guys with. I do agree with a lot of points. Firstly, there is a very important saying which goes a little bit with what Steven said and perhaps what John said. There's a saying in Arabic, in Arab culture. I'm not going to say it in Arabic, but it basically means the master dies learning. You know, nobody's above learning. Nobody's above the learning process. Everybody keeps learning. So this particular statement is taught in multiple cultures, not just in mine, obviously, but in multiple cultures as a way of life. It's not necessarily a lesson per se. It's something you carry with you. It's something that you have to understand. I mean, even if you're a businessman or somebody who's learning how to be a parent or something, you're never done with learning how to accomplish your goals. You're always challenged. Time changes everything. Nothing's the same today as it was yesterday. So I do agree with a lot of the points which you made that Luke, you know, he's not 100. Whoever said he was ready, he never got lessons how to be a Jedi. You know, master. He never saw how the Jedi Council taught younglings and you know, fought off Asajj Ventress and you know, whomever else. He never saw any of that. But at the same time, guys, my entire honest to God beef here with this argument is that, okay, I hear what you're saying, but even if he's going to learn how to do it, he's seen the mistakes of his past. If he is wise enough to talk in The Last Jedi about the hubris of the Jedi Council to fail against, you know, at the height of their powers, they allowed Darth Sidious to rise and crush them entirely. I mean, that's not verbatim what he says, but that's basically what he says. And you know, if he's wise enough to see that, and he has the knowledge to know that, the fact, you know, I actually thought about this as like, maybe not a lot of the knowledge of what happened in the first place is actually attainable to him. Maybe he can't even know what the Clone Wars were about. No, if I'm taking this argument fully and deeply, no, I'm assuming that he knows almost everything that happened and how it happened and how events unfolded, and he can see what happened in the Clone Wars. This is an assumption I'm going to make. If somebody, you know, if any of you hasn't objected to that, please tell me now, because I've built a bunch of my arguments on this. So just let me know. The thing is that if he can see what has gone on in the past, then he most definitely can learn from them and build himself a pedestal. Maybe not a pedestal. I don't mean a pedestal in terms of like a godlike figure or demigod or something, but definitely build himself a hierarchy or a method of teaching. It doesn't have to be a curriculum, but it can be lessons. Just as he said, lesson 1, 3 lessons, right? He's going to teach you 3 lessons. Now, he's teaching her that he's being a little bit sarcastic. He's being a little bit pedantic. He's being a little bit, what's the word when you're treating someone like a child? Yeah, anyway, he's being a little bit like that, sort of like tutoring her to sort of steer her in the direction of what he believes, rather than just teach her that way. If he can teach lessons to his younglings, to his new school, I understand that it's heartbreak to lose them. He shouldn't have lost them in the first place. Okay, let's go beyond, you know, we can't go that far back. So let's go to what happens when basically when Kylo Ren, when Ben Solo turns into Kylo Ren, when he is seduced, and then the Knights of Ren, you know, other students join his side and they decimate the rest of his school. You know, this is heartbreaking. This is heart-wrenching. He can't, I understand that he's human. Of course he's human, but he is a force-sensitive human. He's a powerful human. Yes, we relate to him, but we don't just relate to him because he could be one of us. We relate to him because he's something that we want to be. If we had that bit of magic, we would want to be like him. We would want to see how he rises above it. So if I'm gonna reverse back a little bit to something that you guys said, something that Brian said, and something that JG said, yes, he is a hero. In The Last Jedi, he does the most Jedi thing I could have ever seen. Damn, that scene at the end. Oh my goodness, he is the spark. He fights back. He doesn't just make a comeback. He goes all in. He pushes his chips all in, and he's just dying for it. And he is doing this for everyone. Part of me is a little bit cynical. I've seen this on a bunch of blogs when I was researching a little bit about this. This was about a month ago, I think. Somebody was talking about it on Reddit. Of course, this is a spiral, but it's a point that really resonated with me. When Luke really goes back to being, to linking himself with the Force and pushing himself to not just sense everything that's going on, but to place himself there, but to place himself on the battlefield, on the battlegrounds, and he's sacrificing himself. It's a little bit convenient to sacrifice yourself knowing that you can become a Force ghost and you can go into the afterlife like that. I know that's a little bit cynical for me to say, but that has to be said because it just resonated with me a little bit. It's not necessarily one of my main arguments at all. It's just something that, it tickled me a little bit. And I think some people might appreciate this idea. I don't appreciate it entirely because I don't think it's okay for you to say, oh yeah, of course I can go, I can go commit suicide because, hey, fuck it, because my afterlife, is basically going to aid me in this. So I'm not scared of the afterlife. But actually he has the confidence to do this. He actually has the confidence to implant himself into this arena again. But the real negatives that I have is that he not only did he require to push it back, to push himself back. He had to push himself back. He was so isolated. He cut himself off from the Force entirely, to the point where, of course, he has missed the point of the mistakes that Yoda made, the great Yoda. And he pushed himself into exile and cut himself off from the Force, just as Yoda did, to the point where even his new student, Rey, did that in episode 9. Man, are you going to keep repeating this cycle? When he shows up in episode 9, the first thing he tells Rey is like, obviously the first lines he says to Rey is like, a Jedi's weapon is to be treated with more respect, or something along those lines. But then he says also, what are you doing? In this sort of absurd tone. It's like you don't throw this away, you don't do this. What he's actually saying is, you don't do what I did. You confronted me in episode 8 because of what I did. You don't do the same. So how heavy is it in episode 8 when he goes to find, he's acting like a lost hermit. He's not even Gandalf at this point. He's more like, lost hermit. And he goes into this sort of, he goes towards the tree and he finds these books and he goes like, yeah, the sacred Jedi texts. And this is where it all began. And this is where I've come to die. And this is really, really strange. He doesn't really come to die because he's come to live out his days. He's still hunting and fishing and he's contemplating everything that goes on. How many times do you have to contemplate this to go back and try to fix it, man? Like, I am genuinely willing to bet anything that if Leia could speak to him, if Han could speak to him, they wouldn't just speak to him with terms of, I don't know, like the whole tone wouldn't just be of endearment. They wouldn't just beg him to come back. They would be compelling him to, you can't throw us all away. Yes, he's human. Yes, of course we are all at fault. He is not above fault. No one is above fault. He is still learning. We are all learning. These points that he fights himself with are worthy points, but he can rise above it. He should have been the Skywalker to have risen and taken back the light. Yeah, I'm done. Sorry.
No, don't apologize, man. Holy crap. Steven, John, you guys got any rebuttals for that? Because I'm not going to lie, I'm thinking Usof's starting to turn my opinion a little bit.
I mean, I've got a quick rebuttal. One thing, Yusuf, that you mentioned was, he's a human, he is, and that's what JG and I mentioned earlier in our arguments, but also, like, you're supposed to look up to him. And I mean, I think like, as a kid, I talked earlier, I was like 4 years old when I started watching Star Wars, and Luke was my guy, not Han. It was Luke that I wanted to be like, and he starts
That's
off, think about how his progression was in the original trilogy to where he's at now. So like when we were kids and we looked up to Luke and we wanted to be like Luke, and then 30 years pass and here we are now as young adults, and your sense of the world around you has maybe changed from where it was when you were a kid and you didn't understand a lot of what was happening in the world. And so I think you can then connect to him on that sense of like, oh my gosh, I'm still like Luke now. I'm just the old version of Luke from episode 8. And then the fact that he's able to get out of his funk, he's able to come back, and like Yusuf, you mentioned, he should be the one that brings light back. And I think he does at the end of episode 8. And especially like, look at that quote he says in Last Jedi. He's like, it's time for the Jedi to end or to die. And then here we are when Rey says, when she's asking for all the Jedi to come be with her and help her, Luke gets the final word there. Luke has finally said, at one point, he's like, the Jedi, it's their time to die. And look at how Rise of Skywalker brings it all around, where he's now the one that's bringing all of those Jedi with him to help Rey from, whatever part of the Force it is that is trying to fight the evil once and for all for the final time. JG, what else did you want to add on that?
Oh, no, you pretty much took almost exactly what I was going to say. But yeah, I think it's just one of those things is like, I know it's like one of those things, it's hard to keep repeating the fact that he was human, but like, and I think it's one of those things where like the cycle was eventually broken by Rey. Maybe it wasn't necessarily Luke himself, but it was eventually because of the actions of what he did through Rey. So.
All right. Well, you guys got anything else? Any final thoughts you want to throw out there to try to convince our audience which way they should probably vote on this?
I want to add something a little about
I
the
think
Disney
we all
thing.
have a couple of statements. Yeah. Yeah, I think we all got a couple of statements. Go ahead, JG. It's fine.
Let's make
Go.
closing
it's fine.
statements
Go
on
for
it. Yeah.
I want to hit on like the Disney side because I don't think I really hit on that much. I think one thing that I think is really important is that the sequel trilogy was the story of like Finn, Rey, and Poe, not Luke, Han, and Leia. Like I know I probably will unintentionally upset some people, but this was a new story. Yes, it's part of the connective thing, but it's a new trilogy. Their stories were 4, 5, and 6. And I get that they are still very important, very iconic. They're the reason why we have this. But it was these new characters' time to shine. These iconic characters were there to set these new ones up. If you had in this example, since we're talking about Luke, if you had Luke in there any longer, then this becomes more about Luke's story. Ultimately, like 4, 5, or ultimately 7, 8, and 9. However you like it or you don't like it, you don't like some of them, like all of them. It's the story mostly of Rey, but of course her supporting characters, but it's the story of Rey. And if you put Luke in there too much, it becomes less of Rey's story and it becomes more of Luke's story. And I think that was, I think some people, not everyone, but I think some of us went into that mindset thinking that it was going to be Luke's story. And ultimately it wasn't. It was the story of Rey, and Luke was part of her story in this part of the story.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
And I just want to say, and then Yusuf, you can do your closing here. But basically, adding on what JG said is, anytime you open up a book, anytime you watch a TV show, anytime you watch a movie, we are kind of just passengers on this journey. We all have ideas of what we want to have happened. And I think sometimes if we go in with our expectations, we can be disappointed. And like, I think that a lot of people were after walking out of Last Jedi, like, how dare they kill Luke Skywalker? How dare they treat him like that? But you know what? I give Disney more credit than I should sometimes, but they had a decision to make. And like JG said, they wanted to continue Star Wars and not just let Star Wars, end with Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, because they're not going to be around forever, as we saw with Carrie Fisher. So they realized we need to inject new life into this. And it wasn't Luke Skywalker's story. He's a supporting character in a similar vein to what, Obi-Wan or old Ben Kenobi was in the original trilogy. So to give Luke the story arc that they did, and like Brian said earlier, it did do a nice job of kind of echoing his other masters. It echoed Yoda's exile. It echoed with Obi-Wan's exile. It gave him a story arc that if you look at, from his birth in Revenge of the Sith to his death in Last Jedi, and then even coming back as a Force ghost, I'm very satisfied with the way I get to now watch the entire Luke Skywalker saga. And who knows, maybe we'll see more of it there's 30 years, 27 years or whatever between 6 and 7. There's stories still to be told, whether it's in novels or shows. Don't think that Luke Skywalker's story is over. Disney is still going to continue to produce Luke Skywalker's story. We've seen the big moments, and there's still plenty more big moments to happen. And again, look at it from, this is a journey that we got to go on with and see Mark Hamill's great performance over multiple films, over multiple decades.
Yeah, absolutely. Usif, did you want to give some closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I genuinely love that sentiment. Love those sentiments, not just what JG said, because I obviously agreed with that, but also what Steven said. Really, that story. Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head there on how we look at Luke, on how we could look at Luke. Genuinely, of course, we all have our own perspectives and everything, but really, the idea is that not only is he now a supporting character, which we have to deal with, but he had his own shit to unpack, and he's had to go through a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of time in there, and we can sort of really take an in-depth look at this. I'll just, to make it brief, because I really want to make sure that I get a lot of points across, because I want to make sure that I say this. I loved the setup Episode 8 created. May not have loved how Luke was and what he did. The handling of Luke, I thought, was good from the perspective of Disney, from what they were creating. I was not upset when I walked out of that theater. The only thing that really upset me in Episode 8 was they demolished one of the villains that I really liked, General Hux. Who got, he was Hitler in Episode 7, but he was a freaking sideshow act in Episode 8 who was like torn to shreds and made into something funny. But I mean, Luke wise, he like, seriously, when he's dealing with something this powerful, all the stories that are going to come up in between Episode 6 and 7, they're just going to make me regret his actions more. Can't believe that I'm going to regret his actions. Perhaps I built Luke up too much. Perhaps the story is supposed to go in general, like in any format, that you can't have someone who leads you into the right direction no matter what. But I wanted to see that. I almost said needed there, but I really wanted to see Luke show me what he can do. He succumbed really, really, not easily, but he succumbed really hard. He fell down, he fell down really hard on the pavement that he toppled over. He couldn't get up internally. Now, of course, it's difficult and everybody deals with it his own way. The point of the story, I see how it was handled. And of course, Yoda, he takes it to a level where he's treating Luke with this way, where he's telling him to pick himself up and dust himself off. It's the same lesson Yoda teaches him in Empire Strikes Back, in Empire Strikes Back. Young Skywalker, always looking to the horizon, never here, now. That's the thing. Like, just be in the moment and do what you want to do, what you can do now. Luke has failed that lesson since Episode 5. Luke has failed that lesson because maybe he forgot it along the way. Maybe he wasn't persistent enough. Maybe he wasn't challenged enough in this particular lesson. But seriously, I mean, I genuinely love Luke Skywalker for everything that he is, for everything that he stood for. But I didn't see anything that he stood for come alive in Episode 8, except in those last redeeming moments. Whether or not he redeems himself should be discussed in this debate, because I believe that is a very big point of it, and perhaps we don't have enough time to really go into it. The short answer is, sure, I think he's reinstated himself as a Jedi Master. If he had exiled himself beforehand, he had reinstated himself now. But that is nowhere near enough to make up for the carnage that the galaxy is in due to his absence. In The Last Jedi, at the end, I'll leave you with this because I'm droning on for too long. I hope I'm not boring our viewers, but really, perhaps I'm making the same point again and again. But really, we need some hardcore evidence. I need some hardcore evidence to push this through. And one of the hardest thing for me to swallow was that Leia sent out her personal message. I'm not sure how, the more I get into canon, the more I get into Leia's importance in the galaxy and her relationship with different squadrons or different planets or different this and that. When Leia sends out her personal message when they're on Crate, and she's asking for help from the galaxy, from people, from come over, rescue us, SOS, and they've heard us, but they're not coming. And then, they could have come and they could have been stronger, and you could have, risen an entire huge rebellion force if you had Luke Skywalker with you. Yeah, that's one of the huge pieces of evidence for me that really shows me, man, Luke could have been there. He could have been one of your champions, one of your heroes. We could have pushed this forward. It could have been a battle of ideologies rather than a physical battle where you're backed into a corner. But this is what Luke did. I am happy to see him not just as a Force ghost, but as one of the beacons of light to have pulled and helped Rey rise to the challenge against the Sith, to not just restore balance, but to overcome perhaps the greatest evil in Star Wars. I'm a person who keeps saying, I love the evil side of it. I love the evil side of it. Well, guess what? The greatest evil perhaps Star Wars has seen might just be Darth Sidious. So, that's what I got to say. If anything was unclear, please let me know. Let's, hit me up, guys. I hope you understand my point of view of it. And I hope all of our viewers get to see the both sides of it, the good and the bad. I hope I did my side justice. I'm sure you'll agree with me that both Stephen and John did their side justice for sure.
Well said. Well, guys, you listeners out there, this is where you guys come in. Right now, we have put up a poll on the Star Wars Canon Podcast Facebook page, as well as the Star Wars Canon Podcast YouTube channel. We are going to let you guys be the jury in this trial of Luke Skywalker. You've heard everybody's opinions. You've heard both sides of the arguments laid out in some very, very good detail, if I might add. So head on over there, guys. I'll put the links in the description of this podcast for you. Let us know what you guys think. We'll read the results on next week's episode, and we'll see what you guys really think of Luke Skywalker in the sequel trilogy. So look forward to see what you guys have to say. We might even read some of you guys' comments as well, if you guys have anything you want to add to the discussion.
Really tempted to ask you, Brian, to add perhaps an option in the poll.
Yeah.
To add like an episode 2, part 2 to this debate. This would be really cool.
We can do that to continue it. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because Star Wars doesn't believe in double jeopardy. We can do this. Absolutely. So guys,
if the viewers want it.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. We can definitely do a 2-parter to this because, like you said, there's a lot to unpack with it, and I mean, we could do a whole episode of us just sitting and talking about Luke Skywalker for 2 hours. I mean,
or we could pick any other character that we could put on trial in the future too.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Oh yeah,
too.
I love that idea. Like the whole concept of putting one of our characters on trial is fantastic.
Yes, we can look at that definitely because. I think this is a great discussion, and like I said, Usuf, I've always been a very firm defender of Luke Skywalker, and a lot of the things that you've brought to the table, I mean, have really you've got me thinking about some things now and reevaluating some things.
That's good.
Yeah,
I did
absolutely.
myself proud. Okay, that was genuinely one of my I wasn't entirely sure before we started the podcast who was pro and against. But that was one of my hopes that somebody who was pro would be like, yeah, I'm second guessing. That's nice.
Well, you got one. All right, guys, we are getting into the second half of the show. This is where we're going to answer your mailbag questions. How do you guys get a question on the Star Wars Canon Podcast? You simply email it to us at starwarscanonpodcast@gmail.com. We'll go through and pick out a few. And because the show has been on hiatus for so long, there were several questions in the mailbag from just recently that were really, really good, and it was hard for me to go through and just pick out a few, but I had to narrow it down because, this is going to be a huge episode. I knew we were going to be talking for a while, So I had to narrow it down to 4 questions, and I've got 4 of them lined up. I can't wait to hear your guys' thoughts on this stuff as well, because I think these are 4 of the best mailbag questions I think we've ever seen.
They're really good.
On this podcast. So let's get right into this. Question number 1 this week comes from Marcus Newson. And Marcus says, "Hey, Brian, been listening for a while now on Spotify, and I'm really excited for your show to return next week. Keep up the great work. My question concerns Cal Kestis' lightsaber. If you can choose your own color going through the game, what do you think his canon lightsaber color actually is? Would love to hear your thoughts." Usif, did you say you're just finishing Jedi Fallen Order?
Yeah, so I was just finishing my third playthrough, and I really like the game. I'm a huge RPG fan, like general, like because it's just my favorite genre of video games, really. Jedi Fallen Order, it has a huge potential, and here I am with the cyan lightsaber. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Cyan.
Good
Here
choice.
I am. Yeah, here I am with that, because now here's the reason why I chose that. If I can answer that question already, I thought that Cal Kestis wasn't particularly powerful enough to merit an indigo lightsaber, because I associate that not just with obviously not just with Mace Windu, but also with a more advanced form of lightsaber battle. He obviously, his master, he carried a blue lightsaber. I felt like the cyan had a sort of lighter element to it, not just because of how the color sort of comes from. It really comes from Ilum a lot. Like when it shines through the ice, it really displays a lot of, I think, the character inside him, and it also is him taking the fight forward. I know that green is usually the color for Jedi who like to be on the front foot. That's basically what Cal Kestis has to do in the latter stages of his story, is to be on the front foot again. But let's be honest, his whole mentality is he's protecting whatever he's got. He's protecting the holocron. He's trying to protect it. He's trying to get back something. He's trying to hold on to something. Yeah, so this is the color that I chose.
And Brian, if I can jump in, I know JG and I were talking in the chat over the past couple of weeks, because there was a great book that came out called the Star Wars Lightsaber Collection. And we're both looking at our copies right now through the video chat. And if I could read real quick, there's 3 paragraphs, if you don't mind, I'll just share about what it says about Cal Kestis' lightsaber.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it.
Okay. The video game Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order stars Cal Kestis, a Jedi Padawan who survives Order 66 and tries to escape the Empire's notice by working as a drunk scrapper. But he finds himself drawn into conflict with the Second Sister and other Imperial Inquisitors, forcing him to make friends and master his Force abilities as he reclaims the Jedi mantle. Cal is on the journey to find himself and find the Jedi and rediscover the Force, says technical developer Brandon Kelch. Lightsabers are highly customizable in Fallen Order, with the player able to modify Cal's saber at workbenches found throughout the game. Energy blades can be blue or green at first, but the full palette includes purple, cayenne, magenta, indigo, yellow, and orange. Players can unlock a double-bladed lightsaber that can temporarily split into 2 pieces, and cosmetic items include various emitters, switches, sleeves, and hilt materials. Walt Disney Imagineering and Respawn Entertainment shared designs with each other, and some of the Fallen Order lightsaber components match the ones found in Star Wars Workshop at Galaxy's Edge theme park. The design depicted here incorporates the emitter and switch that once belonged to Cal's fallen Jedi Master. The wrapped hilt at the midpoint and the emitter at the opposite side come from Cal's shipmate, Ser Junda. And so this book makes it look like it's kind of like a bluish white almost to it, a blue color.
Okay.
And, one thing that really stood out to me was I did get to go to Galaxy's Edge last year before everything shut down. And I designed mine very similar in the game to what I had in person as my lightsaber hilt.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of a cool tidbit.
Right on. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I so before coming, as I was looking at that question before actually even thinking about the book itself, my thought was, whatever the game sets it as default, in my opinion, I feel like that would be the technical, if we're gonna get to the nitty gritty canon. I feel like it'd be just whatever the default is, and so I feel like, if he starts out with like blue, it's been a while since I've played that, but if it starts out with like a blue, then it's blue, and then as he goes on, he gets the double saber, then he eventually has a double saber. So I feel like whatever the default is, but because of the fact it's a video game and Star Wars is cool and you can have whatever color, whatever shape, we can customize it. But I think for canon purposes, if we were to see him in a TV show, I feel more than likely it would be like just the blue lightsaber and then single or double depending on when we see him.
Well, you get to a
Oh
point.
yeah, single or double. That's a really good question too.
You get to a point in the game where you're on Ilum and you get your kyber crystal, and you have to choose the color of it. You move that stick back and forth to see what color you're going to get. So canon wise, what color did he end up with his rebuilt saber on Ilum?
Well, if we see it in canon, I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I know. It's curious to think about, though. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some things you can look at, like what color his lightsaber was when he was a Padawan. It was blue, but like we said earlier, people grow and people change and they see the world differently. So your color may change as well. So I think it was Usif brought up a good point about protecting the holocron and trying to protect that list of children. Would that lean more towards almost a sentinel, almost like a yellow?
Oh, okay. So Sentinel is yellow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because there's no answer to this right now. Like, I mean, Cal Kestis has only ever appeared in that game. There's no comic. There's nothing to really answer this question right. It's kind of like an Ex Machina thing where you choose your color in the game, but according to the story, exactly what color was it?
It's a good question.
So are we going with blue again, or with the cyan, or?
Well, I think we should know hopefully in the next couple of months, because I did see that they're putting out his lightsaber at Galaxy's Edge as part of the Legacy Collection. So, they already have the kyber crystals built into those, unlike the customizable lightsabers. So once that becomes available and someone ignites it, we should hopefully get an answer from Disney in that regard.
Very nice. That's a good question.
Good question.
We don't get a lot of questions concerning Jedi Fallen Order. It's been out now, what, a year?
1 year.
And it's kind of fallen to the back burner a little bit. Not a lot of people talk about it anymore. I think if we got some announcements here before long concerning maybe a sequel somewhere down the line, I think it would rekindle it. But it's a good question. Marcus, I really don't know what to tell you, man. Personally, I would probably go with yellow, but I don't know, man. Thanks for the question, though. I do appreciate it. Question number 2 this week comes from Kayla Grant, and Kayla says, in my best Obi-Wan voice, hello there. My name is Kayla. I just found your mobile app and podcast and love that you've created something so useful. I've just recently gotten into Clone Wars and was lost in the series until I saw your timeline. You should be very proud of your work. Keep it up. Thanks. I appreciate that. I was wondering, since Palpatine is Anakin's father, here we go. We're going down the rabbit hole. Does that technically mean that Luke, Leia, Ben, Anakin, and Rey are all Palpatines? Or am I missing something? Looking forward to your returning episode. Guys, I don't know, because in canon so far, have we really gotten a concrete answer about that?
It's been hinted, but nothing concrete.
No. I didn't think so. I know that I think it was the second Vader run kind of touched on it a little bit. But I think it was, like we were talking earlier, from a certain point of view, I think it was one of those things where that's what Anakin was kind of thinking, or maybe from Anakin's point of view.
Or was it a vision even? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we really didn't get a whole lot on that. It's kind of like when Maul asks Obi-Wan on Tatooine after the shortest lightsaber duel ever, which isn't a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. That's not a bad thing. But when he asks Obi-Wan, is Luke the chosen one? And Obi-Wan says he is. That was from Obi-Wan's point of view. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not Obi-Wan. It's not Star Wars telling us that, yeah, Luke was the chosen one. It was just Obi-Wan's point of view because of what had happened to Anakin. So this whole thing with Anakin, seeing these visions of Palpatine around Shmi and stuff, which, by the way, is an insanely great comic run. If you guys haven't read any of the Vader stuff, that should be top of your list when it comes to comics. Absolutely amazing. But do you guys think somewhere down the line do you think they would make that decision to say that Palpatine manipulated the midichlorians, you know, somewhere in the galaxy? Because in Legends, wasn't that what had happened? Has anybody read Darth Plagueis?
No.
No?
I'm sorry.
See, I haven't either. And I've been hearing more and more tidbits about it, and I've been curious. I've been tempted to pick it up. I don't remember. Hang on. Let me look it up real quick, because I want to know if in Legends that's what the official story was. We're going to find out. Star Wars Legends.
And while Brian's looking that up, would you want to see that confirmed, or do you like a little bit of mystery? What do you think, guys?
I like not knowing. I like not knowing. Because like, we know Palpatine had definitely his hand somehow involved, but I don't think he was like actually directly involved, if that makes sense. It's one of those things I don't need explained. Like, it's fine not knowing. Like, I don't need to know. We know that Anakin was a phenomenon in the Force. It was something that, you know, was very rare. And I don't need it explained. It's fine on its own.
Okay, so I've got it pulled up for Legends. This is what happened in Legends. This is not canon, but this is from, I think, the Darth Plagueis novel. Yeah, Darth Plagueis, Darth Sidious. They called it The Grand Experiment. And it says, the Grand Experiment was conceived by the Sith Lord Darth Plagueis' desire to create a life form by gaining control of the midichlorians, the sentient microscopic organisms that enabled certain beings to wield the power of the Force. Not only did the Dark Lord deem the project a failure, his efforts ultimately backfired and caused the midichlorians to create Anakin Skywalker, the prophesied chosen one of Jedi legend who was destined to restore balance to the Force by destroying the Sith. That's in Legends. And we haven't, I mean, like you guys said, it's been hinted at in the comics, but I haven't seen anything about Darth Plagueis being involved in that. Like,
I would
at all.
personally really like to see that addressed, because I think it's just a huge gaping hole, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be touched on at one point or another by Disney. If it's not, then okay. I enjoyed the mystery. It's not something that I need answered particularly, but I do think it will be answered at one point or another. Maybe it'll be answered by some sort of concoctive answer. It doesn't have to be confirmed that Palpatine particularly, he meddled with it. But let's, I was talking with Steven a little bit about this earlier just before the podcast, because if Palpatine does, let's say it is confirmed, let's say he does actually, meddle with the midichlorians himself, and he does create Anakin inside of Shmi Skywalker. If he chooses Shmi particularly, I don't know why. Maybe he met her, maybe he knew her, maybe something. I don't know. If he uses his own midichlorians, then that is a trace of his life force, or his force, or the force within him. In that sense, he would have, a part of him would have been used to create Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader. And he, perhaps that is the mastermind behind it, behind this whole thing. If it's not used particularly like that, if it's not used in a way where, okay, it's not part of his force, but perhaps he sort of targeted a particular amount of force, and he was able to manipulate the midichlorians and the life force, going beyond Darth Plagueis to a certain extent, to play with them a little bit, to play with the concept. Sorry, just a little bit, to sort of create this life within another being. So a life within a life, as in the baby growing within the womb of a woman. Yeah, that wouldn't necessarily be. He wouldn't necessarily be his child or his offspring, not even remotely. I don't think so. Perhaps he was concocted by something. He was Frankenstein's monster to Doc Frankenstein, but that doesn't make Frankenstein. This doesn't make the monster Frankenstein's son. He makes him his creation. And that's a whole different concept right there. How to create him? What is the concept? What is the relationship between the midichlorians and the force-sensitive people and the force-sensitive lords and so on? But this is a very intriguing question. I really like how she thought about this.
Didn't Pinocchio refer to Geppetto as his dad, though?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't think about it like that. But then Geppetto was making a son.
That's true too. That
wanted
was
a son.
actually his. Yeah, you're right. That was his end game.
So when you create your creation, do you tell it it's your son or it's your creation, Are you its God? Are you its dad? Are you its son? Are you its angel? Yeah.
Well, if
that's a whole
Palpatine
different
was
philosophical
making
question.
clones of himself, and a clone of his had a daughter, and he referred to her as his granddaughter, then that would beg the point that the clones were his sons, right?
Wait, hang on. What's this point? A clone of him had
Because
his.
you look at Rise of Skywalker.
Is that where Rey came from?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's if you're referring to Rey as Palpatine's granddaughter, which they flat out have said you are a Palpatine,
Yeah.
and her father was a failed clone, a non, I guess a non-force sensitive clone of him, a failed clone. So that, I mean, that's a lineage there. He was referring to his clones as his son. But of course, I mean, that's clones. That's not manipulating midichlorians inside of somebody else to create life. I mean, it's a different technique in doing it, I suppose, but it's an interesting question. Because let's say for a second that, yeah, they're all Palpatines. Think about the family tree there and how twisted that sucker is. I mean, because if
that sucker, yeah.
that would mean Anakin. That means Vader would have been Palpatine's son, which would have made Luke his grandson, and Leia his granddaughter, and then that would have made Ben his great grandson.
That
Is
makes
that right? Or
really
great-grandson?
complicated.
Yeah,
We're
right.
back to Game of Thrones again.
Yeah.
Circle back.
That would have made Kylo Rey's uncle or something along those lines.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it's just weird. Like
We stop.
yeah, no, it's just what is it with Star Wars and twisting family trees around and just pretending like boundaries don't exist? But anyway, it's an interesting question, and hopefully somewhere down the line they'll finally give us an answer. I mean, they finally answered the Boba Fett thing after how many years of us asking for it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure.
I
At
think
some
we
point,
will.
Yeah, they'll touch on it. They almost have to. I mean, they almost have to, unless they're just going to give the safe answer, saying, "Well, he was actually the chosen one. Like it was really a virgin birth kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like a miraculous conception. Which I don't know, man. I have a hard time buying into that because they've tried so hard to. I mean, you're taking the Force, right? I mean, the whole midichlorian thing kind of blows it out of the water anyway. You took something that was mystical, which had you not brought midichlorians into the whole thing and the Force was this mystical thing, yeah, I could get it then. I get a miraculous conception. But when you add a scientific aspect to it, it's hard to see miraculous conception with a scientific backing. Like we got all these mailbag questions this week and we don't even have answers for them. Like that's how good they are. And yeah, that's fine. But it's enough. It's thought provoking, which is kind of the whole point of this, right?
One thing I just want to say, because like I'm just a huge fan of this idea that I've always had. I really want E.K. Johnston, who wrote like the Ahsoka book, and I think she wrote the Padme books. I've always have been saying and pushing this that there should be a book focused on Shmi, because seeing from her perspective, and I think that is where you could get some of these answers, like indirectly and maybe some directly. But a story about her, about what she's going through leading up to this, to eventually this happening. That is like great canon in the story, just waiting to happen, of like a character where she's so important yet so forgotten about. Like there, you could do so much with Shmi, and like I just think that E.K. Johnston or even some of the other authors could really like do such a great job with that. And I think that's where you could really possibly dig into this whole, where is Anakin from? Is Anakin actually Palpatine or Plagueis, etc.?
I think E.K. Johnston would be the best author for that, considering what you said with both Padme novels. And with the Ahsoka novel, that strong female lead, that would really, really work. God, now you got me wanting that, because you're right. We don't.
That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, we don't see a lot of stuff with Shmi at all, and without her, none of this happens.
Don't worry, if you don't get a
lot of
novel,
question marks around Shmi.
Yeah, if we don't get a novel, we'll get a short story and from a certain point of view in 2039. So
Oh God, 2030, or I'd be what? Would it be 39?
That'd be the 40th anniversary.
39.
Right? Oh wow.
You know, and that'll damn you. What? And now we're gonna get, God, when would it be? I won't even be alive probably when we get 40 short stories for the sequel trilogy.
Oh my God.
Well, think about it. That would be what 2019 was. Rise. Yeah. Holy cow.
I'll be in my 60s.
Well, from 2015, it would be 40. It would be 55. 2055 for the 40-year anniversary of Force Awakens. let's get on to the next question, or I'm going to drive myself crazy thinking about my own mortality. Question number 3 this week comes from Bobby Perkins. And Bobby says, Brian and friends, I pose to you this question. Since Rey was able to hear the Jedi of the past, does that mean Luke and Leia were also able to be trained by Jedi long gone? We never really hear anything on this and was wondering if I just missed something or if there is an instance where this happens. May the Force be with you. Who here has read the novelization for Rise of Skywalker?
I have.
I really want to read it.
So Usif hasn't?
I have
No.
not either.
Oh, you haven't either, Steven?
No, not that one.
I think there was something in that novel. Correct me if I'm wrong, JG. I think there was something in there talking about the flashback scene to when Luke is training Leia about hearing the Jedi of the past. Wasn't there?
It sounds really familiar now because I remember that moment being like, "Oh my gosh, wait, what?" I think you're right.
So, I mean, I think it would make total sense. Otherwise, how does Luke learn to become a Force ghost? How does Leia learn to become a
Exactly.
Force ghost? They had to have had some kind of training from Yoda, Obi-Wan, probably even Anakin at some point. And I mean, why? That's a missed opportunity. Like, how are you going to give Rey this scene where you just hear their voices? And then you find out, I mean, when you start piecing it together, you start finding out that Luke and Leia were like almost formally trained by Force ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I think in that novel, there was something. I should have had the novel in here with me before I started recording. I should have looked it up, but I'm pretty sure.
I have it up here, but I'm trying to.
Do you have it handy?
I'm trying to skim it, but I have no idea where it is.
Where
'cause
it's at? Yeah, I need to start putting like dog ears in my
right,
novels.
like little
That way-
post-it notes everywhere.
Yeah, sticking out of all of like textbooks. But I'm pretty sure that did happen. And because, even Leia was having premonitions. Leia was so powerful with the Force, she was having premonitions about the death of her son at the end of her training and stuff like that. And then she just walked away from all of it. You would think all the way up until, let's see, in Legends, I think in the original Thrawn trilogy, I think it was 5 years a Force ghost could hang around before it had to become part of the Cosmic Force. I think's what it was. I think that's what Obi-Wan told Luke at the beginning of that book, but he was going to be gone forever. Obviously, that's not the case in canon because, I mean, Yoda's coming back in Last Jedi and whatnot, but you would have to think that they were training all the way up. I mean, can you imagine, like, put yourself in Luke's shoes for a second. You have a Jedi Academy, right, or a Jedi school, and you're teaching all these students, but then you've got Force ghosts of people who are literally the Force that can just pop in on a whim and like teach a lesson and then pop back out. And your Jedi Order was still fell, having that kind of knowledge passed down. You know what I'm saying? Unless maybe they didn't pop up for the students. I don't know, because like I think was it?
Yeah, you're right.
Was
That's
it
kind of heavy. Yeah.
Was it Steven that said earlier? There's a lot of time there where stories haven't been told about Luke Skywalker and about the Jedi Temple. There's a lot of potential there for that academy, especially bringing knowledge in from the netherworld of the Force that had never been brought into a Jedi Order before and taught as a curriculum. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
JG, you still looking for that?
Yeah, I'm still looking. I just remember it's during I think it's whenever Luke is talking to Rey, I think, and because Rey's like having her little temper tantrum.
Right, she's having her pity party.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
she almost throws the lightsaber into the fire of the crashed TIE fighter or the crashed. Yeah.
On the same planet that the First Order knew where Luke was. That's the other thing about. We're gonna get off topic here for a second, but that's the other thing that got me about the whole Rey going rogue and going into exile. Why would you go exile yourself on the same planet that the First Order knew Luke had been on? They're gonna come find you. You know what I mean? Because Snoke even said, first off, Kylo had seen the island, and then Snoke said, I see the planet that he's on. We'll go obliterate the entire island. And they knew where Luke had been, so why would you exile yourself and go into hiding in plain sight?
I mean, I think Rey just sort of
Wasn't thinking.
ran off. Yeah, she sort of ran off and went to one of the only places
Boy,
that she knows.
Where have we seen that before?
Really, and
Well, Yusuf brings up a good point. She's been to Jakku. She's been to Takadana.
Yeah.
She's been to Starkiller Base. She's been to Achto. Like, she's been to a you can count on one hand how many planets
How
she's
many
been
planets?
to, right?
Yeah.
She's been to Crate. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
about it.
So she really has not been many places. So she goes to a place that's feels safe to her, I think.
Right. I guess that makes sense. But also, why would you go to a planet where all the caretakers hate you?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Oh, and by the way, in case anybody doubts that is the planet, like she does go back to that exact planet, and how are we sure that that's planet? It's because when Luke shows up as a Force ghost, he gives her Leia's lightsaber from those places, from the huts where he's hidden that. So that's for sure the same planet. Just in case somebody's word is like, oh, maybe it's not the same planet. Maybe she just ran out somewhere. No, that's the same exact place.
It just happened to be another
where they
ocean
were.
planet with an island that looked identical to 8 with ports. It just happened to be the exact same kind of ecosystem.
It was off the coast of Wales too, or Ireland, or wherever it was.
Isn't it gorgeous there? God, I'd love to go there.
Oh yeah, that'd be awesome. Best by
Yeah,
all the
Luke
islands.
and Leia had to have been trained by the Jedi long gone. It's
Oh, yeah.
It's and not just what is in the novel for Rise of Skywalker, not just some passing, mention. There had to have been substance to it for them to learn how to be Force ghosts. There had to have been some serious training there.
What about that meditation, Rey? One of the questions I had was where Rey initiated, at first learned this the meditation. Be with me. Tap into the Force and try to speak to the Jedi. Try to tap into that. Leia probably taught her that,
Leia
or
had to
maybe
have.
Luke on the planet. Yeah,
It had to have been Leia.
this ties in perfectly with exactly what you're saying, Brian. Like it had to have been something along those lines.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's too much there's too much evidence to support it. Then there's more evidence pointing towards it than there is against it. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
it would have been really cool to see. It would have been something that, I mean, we've all seen that fan edit for the end of Rise of Skywalker, where all the Force ghosts appear behind Rey and they all put their hands out, and
Yeah, that's cool.
you know what I'm talking about, like that. It's just thinking about it gives you chills, and I want to get your guys' opinion on this real quick, because I was, and this is kind of on topic, but not really, but it is. I was on Mark Tolley's War of the Stars, I think last week. Yeah, I think it was last week, and we were talking about Rey fighting Palpatine, and how do we know he's really dead, right? Because we saw him die once, and now he came back, and now we saw him die again. Who's to say he couldn't come back again? And from a netherworld point of view, I think it would have been cool for Luke to tell Rey on Ahch-To, if you can take care of him on the physical side of things, we'll take care of him on this side. Because you can't just destroy his body. You have to obliterate his spirit, right? You have to completely annihilate him. So seeing something like that where, Rey is trying to take him out physically, and you see all the Force ghosts put their hands out and obliterate him, and then it cuts to like this weird netherworld kind of, world, and you see the Force ghosts of Obi-Wan and Yoda and Luke and Anakin and
Take him on.
even
so to
Leia,
speak,
like
yeah.
physically, or not physically, but spiritually taking on Palpatine and obliterating him from that side of things. Am I crazy, or would that have just been one of the most epic effing things you'd have ever seen in Star Wars?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Would have been brilliant. Would have made much more. It would have given us a much more in-depth look. Would have been much more in-depth.
Yeah, and knowing,
It would have been worth it more. Yeah.
because at this point we don't know. Palpatine could pop back up in another 30 years. Maybe he had another planet somewhere with clones growing, and he just cast his spirit. You know what I'm saying? So
No more.
Plus, it would have tied everything together. Seeing those original prequel and original series, original trilogy characters, coming together for one last fight. You know what I mean?
oh yeah, and remember what Luke said: nobody's ever really gone.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
the one. Nobody's
that-
ever really
it's that
gone.
kinda
And then
obvious
Han
warning.
shows up to see Kylo. That's not a Force ghost. That's probably just Kylo's
that was his memory.
premonition.
Memory.
I don't know. His or maybe his conscience. Man, Bobby Perkins has got us going on this.
Yeah, he does,
So-
right?
I did find the actual
You found
part
it.
in the book. Yes, it's actually on page 8. It's actually whenever she's training with Leia, apparently. It says, "Oh, Luke, I'm hoping I'm doing this right," she thought. Leia was no Jedi Master, but she had learned from the best. And not just from Luke. Over the years, she occasionally heard the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi through the Force, and even more rarely, that of Yoda. Some days it had felt as though she learned from the Force itself. She was first and foremost a politician and a general, but she had accepted her Jedi legacy, embraced it as best as she could.
I think Leia was actually the chosen
Fantastic.
one between
There
those
you go.
two. Because I think Leia was, dare I say, more powerful than Luke.
I think she had potential to be more powerful.
I think you're right. I think she did have the potential. I think it was there. Because even Yoda thought Leia was going to be the one to show up on Dagobah to train. He never thought it was going to be Luke.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah,
that's-
where is that? I've seen that. I've seen that idea
That is
being
in-
floated around. Where?
Oh, where was
Where
that?
is that? Where Yoda refers to the Skywalker or the Chosen One as a she. I've seen that floating
Oh,
around.
I was it from a certain point of view for the Star Wars, the first from a certain point of view.
The first one.
Yeah,
You tell
that's
me?
where it was.
You were
Yeah,
the first one.
there was a
okay.
short story in there about Yoda that was it gave some little tidbits like the blanket that he has is like Qui-Gon's poncho or his Jedi robes or whatever, that brown blanket that he has, which was kind of cool.
Oh, is it? It's Qui-Gon's
but,
poncho.
yeah, but he
Wow.
always talked
That's
about
pretty cool.
how you're right. I think he did. I think that's where it was at, where he mentioned the Skywalker as a she was going to come train. I think you're right. I think that was it.
Yep.
It's very cool. It's very cool.
Anyway, yeah, no. So
Wait, hang on. So I have a question about this. So
Yeah.
did Yoda cut himself off from the Force when he was on Dagobah, like Luke did,
I don't
or was
think
he sort of
so.
just limiting himself a little bit?
I don't think he cut himself off because he lifted the X-wing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
And maybe he probably still communed with Qui-Gon, and who knows if he communed with Obi-Wan, like telepathically. with the
right.
Force.
Okay, he just sort of hid himself away, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the whole thing with Yoda on Dagobah was the planet was so encased in dark side energy that it hid his one little like flame of light.
Mm-hmm.
So even if Vader happened to fly by Dagobah, he wouldn't be able to sense Yoda. He would just sense all the life and the actual dark side. That's why he built his house so close to the cave too, wasn't it?
Because
that's
that's
right.
where a lot of Force energy was communing, so to
It
speak.
was like a nexus, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
a nexus, excuse me. Yeah,
There's
it
actually
was
a
for concentrated, not commuting. Concentrated.
There's actually a story about the cave in The Empire Strikes Back from a certain point of view.
So excited.
Oh,
to
yeah?
read
That'd be
that.
good.
That's cool.
I'm so
Yep.
excited to read that. And now we know that cave got destroyed too by Kylo Ren.
Mhm.
In the comics. So yeah, it's there's a lot surrounding Dagobah, and especially considering Yoda had his own experience in that cave also in Clone Wars. That was where he went and he what vision did he have there? Was it the evil Yoda?
Yeah.
Did he see his evil self? Was that
on Dagobah?
I think it was, because I know he went to Dagobah during that arc, but he was talking to those nether beings, and Qui-Gon was kind of leading him. I know that was Dagobah. I hear keyboard tapping, so I know somebody's looking something up.
Yeah, it's Dagobah.
I thought so. I thought that looked familiar. I can't wait to read that from a certain point of view. I'm really excited about that one. So, Bobby, to answer your question, yes, Luke and Leia were trained by Force Ghost in a roundabout way. In a nutshell, yes, that's exactly what happened. Thanks for the question, though, Bobby. I appreciate it. And the final question this week comes from Brandy Foster. And Brandy says, "Hey there, fellow nerds. Brian, I've been listening to your podcast for a while. I place your show above even Jedi Council simply because you don't kiss Disney's ass." Never heard that before, but that's a good thing, right? That's what we're after. You tell us what you like and you don't like, and you never tell people that disagree with you that they're wrong. The fandom needs more people like you. Never stop doing what you're doing. I appreciate that. And that's why I brought these guys on, because they're basically the exact same and very tolerant of other people's opinions, except for maybe it wasn't one of you guys. Never mind. I'm thinking of somebody else. Just completely forget that I said anything. It's really late and I'm tired, and I'm preaching to the choir because it's like 3 a.m. where he's at. So,
excuse me, it's 5:20.
oh
my gosh.
Jesus, we need to wrap. We've been going for like 2.5 hours. So Brandy's question is, how different would things have turned out if Qui-Gon hadn't been killed and had trained Anakin instead of Obi-Wan? I love your show and I'm loving the app so far. I hope to see this get huge. Thanks for the question, Brandy. Guys, if Qui-Gon hadn't been killed and he had
My
trained
God.
Anakin Skywalker, what do you think he would have done different than Obi-Wan? How well do you think Anakin would have received it? And do you think when like the come to Jesus moment happened, how do you think it would have went down?
I have a few things to say on this, but I'll give the floor to someone else if you guys want.
Qui-Gon would have been more of a father figure to Anakin that Anakin always was looking
Yeah.
for, I think. Whereas Obi-Wan was more of his brother. And if you think of a sibling relationship versus a parent-son relationship, I think that's a very different type of bond. So I think maybe Anakin
Absolutely.
would have, I don't know if I want to say respected is the right word, but maybe he would have been more, he would have listened more.
He would adhere it. He would have
Yeah,
adhered
that's a
him.
better word. I think that whole relationship dynamic would have been different. I think possibly Qui-Gon could have like used that parental view to maybe lead Anakin on a different path, maybe.
Right on. No, I think one of the biggest
Yeah, absolutely.
differences.
Yeah, I would.
I
Yeah,
think-
no, go for it, Brett. Sorry.
I think one of the biggest things Qui-Gon would have done differently, and I'll just put this out real quick. I think Qui-Gon, after seeing how close Anakin was with his mother, I think he would have let him go see her once in a while. And I know that's forbidden for Jedi, but Anakin was obviously a special case, and he knew who his mother was, and Qui-Gon knew he was very attached to his mother. I think had Anakin had the opportunity to go back and see Shmi a handful of times before what happened with the Tusken Raiders happened, I think he would have received it. He'd have still been pissed off, don't get me wrong, but I think he would have, I don't want to say accepted, I think he would have handled it a little more, I don't want to say maturely either, a little more Jedi-like, if you know what I'm talking, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and Qui-Gon was one to break the rules, so like that seems like something Qui-Gon would have done.
Yeah. I come from a different point of view, which is, I guess, gonna be fun. I think regardless, I think Palpatine's gonna just have his way. Like, and I think my perspective, while I think you guys make good points, I almost think there's a possibility that Anakin kind of like rebels even more against Qui-Gon. And I feel that Palpatine could even do more damage, and I think it could possibly expedite the process. I think Obi-Wan did not agree a lot of the times with the council. I think he even says that in like episode 3. He's like, the council's asking you this, not me. And I think definitely would have helped him in some areas. Like I think definitely possibly seeing Shmi and like I think like a fatherly figure would have been huge. But I think Palpatine's too smart. Like Palpatine, he knew the cracks, and if he would just find the cracks to the Qui-Gon relationship.
That's a very interesting perspective. Like genuinely, I never actually thought about that as a realistic possibility. I always thought if Qui-Gon would have been the mentor to Anakin, the father figure that he had, the guiding hand. Firstly, I would have thought that eventually Qui-Gon would have taken Anakin and split from the Jedi. I think that it would have been too intense for the rest of the council. He would have been teaching Anakin things that the rest of the council thought, no, what the hell are you doing? What on earth are you doing? Or what in the galaxy are you doing? Whatever. But he would have taken Anakin away, perhaps to some twisted planet, perhaps to some far off planet, something on the outer rim, something where he could test Anakin not just physically but emotionally. Emotionally is a huge part of Qui-Gon. Having read Master and Apprentice, which doesn't delve too deep into Qui-Gon, I had huge respect before for Qui-Gon Jinn, but I really love him more now. And seeing his responses and his, in the writing of Master and Apprentice, she really delves into Qui-Gon Jinn's thought process in his responses to the Jedi Council on certain things and how he feels about Obi-Wan and his thought process. I think that would have really helped him out, and he would have been a much more gory character, like more in your face sort of character when he was teaching Anakin things. So that would have led to a stronger showdown with Palpatine. I think Qui-Gon might not have sensed him, but I think Palpatine would have revealed himself to try to take Anakin from Qui-Gon Jinn because he would have wanted to take him. Would he still have wanted to take him? It is a very emphatic yes, in my opinion, and that would have been a completely different story. It would have been steered further away from the council. This is this is kind of far-fetched. I know what I'm saying. It's kind of out there. It's a little bit extreme, but I do think what would have happened in the end. Of course, you're absolutely right, John. That Palpatine is just too smart for that. He has his way, and that is, if I'm completely honest, the whole point of Star Wars as a story. That he kind of has his way, and this is what happens. But perhaps, if we're talking about this as a sort of universe and the lore of it, or in the mythology of it, as you say, to quote you, the thing is that if you really take in Qui-Gon and everything that he can be, he's not just, Qui-Gon is pushed forward as such a philosopher. He's not that much a philosopher. He wants to actually use his philosophy in his teachings. He's just not allowed that much, and he clashes too hard with so many others. And eventually Count Dooku, he turns into Darth Tyrannus because he's of the same mind of Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon dies because of the neglect. Qui-Gon is befallen because of the neglect of the Jedi Council. But Anakin wouldn't have had neglect at all. He would have had a wonderful, nurturing sort of thing. I do think Qui-Gon would have been nurturing and not just a shadow to grow up in the shade of. Yeah, that's my piece.
Do you think Qui-Gon might have trained Anakin with the mindset that he is the chosen one? Because Obi-Wan and the Council, I don't think ever really. I mean, Obi-Wan did in the end, I think, when he's yelling at Anakin, "You were the chosen one."
Chosen one.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever told him that. Did anybody ever tell him?
I don't know if they did or not, and I don't think the Council really bought into it a whole lot. And because even in Episode 3, it says, according to the prophecy, your apprentice is the only one that can bring balance to the Force. Or even in Episode 2, and even Yoda makes the comment, a prophecy misread could have been. So they have their doubts about Anakin, and even Mace doesn't trust him in Episode 3. But he was never trained. I mean, he was trained as a typical Jedi. He wasn't trained with any special.
You're right.
With any kind of special treatment, concerning the prophecy. And I think with Qui-Gon, after reading Master and Apprentice and seeing how much he really did delve into the prophecies and how Dooku helped him do that, and how how much was there, because there's a lot of prophecies in Master and Apprentice that were kind of mentioned. Yeah. There's a lot there. I think Qui-Gon would have taken a different approach, and like you guys said earlier, not as more of a brother figure, but more as a father figure, and kind of trained him up.
A master, and a real master.
Telling him, and would have been honest with him, look, this is who I believe you are. This is what that person is going, is prophesied to do. We're going to train you.
I think that even you touched on a really cool point. I think even if Qui-Gon didn't say that, I think Anakin would have asked that. Like, why are you doing, like, if Qui-Gon had split, like Qui-Gon is giving him all this force, giving him all this attention, giving him all this knowledge and stuff. Why are you doing this? Why are you focusing on me? Why am I, what is happening? Like, are you just my master? What's going on? Sort of thing. And he probably would have told him, Anakin, you're special. Anakin, you're this. Anakin, you're that. You can't leave yourself to this because you can do this. You can do that. You can do other things that other people can't, your potential and so on. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Brian. Like that, I think that's a really cool idea.
And another thing to kind of go along with it too, when Anakin was, being trained around other students, he could see that he was more powerful than they were. And I mean, he had something to compare himself to. And if Qui-Gon had run off with Anakin and trained him as the chosen one, Anakin wouldn't have had anything to compare himself to. He wouldn't have been as arrogant, I don't think, and his abilities and what his power level was at such a young age. If you guys know what I'm saying, like I think it would have turned out way, way different. And I think Anakin would have actually maybe been more prepared when Palpatine, if Palpatine came and started, with his advances on trying to teach him. I think Anakin might have been more prone to recognize that quicker and nip it in the ass.
Do you think Qui-Gon, because we talked earlier, Brian, you mentioned about letting Anakin see Shmi.
Mm-hmm.
And while, Obi-Wan probably knew Anakin had maybe not a marriage with Padme, but knew there was a close, bond with them.
Right.
Do you think
he must have.
would Qui-Gon have allowed that, or would Qui-Gon have been more aware and maybe nipped that in the bud as well?
I don't know. I mean, in the scenario where we take Anakin and Qui-Gon and they run off together,
Padme shouldn't be in the picture, right?
Yeah, Padme's not in the picture.
Padme
She's
wouldn't
in-
even
she's
be
on
in the
Coruscant.
Perhaps
picture.
someone else is in the picture. Yeah, but perhaps someone else is in the picture.
That's-
They may come
that's
in
true.
contact with other
Well,
boys and
think about
gals,
it.
and
Qui-Gon was with Obi-Wan, we assume, whenever Obi-Wan was maybe flirting a little bit, having a friendship with Duchess Satine. So think of it, maybe history could repeat itself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. And well, that's something else too. Think about how Qui-Gon handled that situation also. When he found out that Obi-Wan and Satine were kind of, when they lived on Mandalore for a year, Qui-Gon was quick to get him off planet and get him away from her.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there was that also.
Yeah, I think Qui-Gon wouldn't have really allowed a love life, so to speak, but he would have um, not discouraged. See, he wouldn't have encouraged per se, but he would not have discouraged emotions and feelings and emotional attachment to family, to home, to something which gives you security, something which gives you a sense of who you are. Because I think that a lot of what would have made this Anakin, the one we're talking about, the potential, Qui-Gon's Anakin, a lot of what would have made this Anakin unique, or rather, let's say, separate from the Anakin we know in Star Wars, is the fact that he embraces that he was a slave, is the fact that he embraces Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon helps him embrace it. Qui-Gon pushes him towards making sure that he knows that there is light and you must harness it, that sort of thing.
It's an interesting what if. It really is.
It's very interesting what if. It's very, very interesting.
That could have, I mean,
Duel of the Fates. Duel of the Fates.
Yeah. And it's a series. I think a what if series would be really cool for Disney Plus. I mean, they're doing it with the MCU, that what if series. Why couldn't they do something along those lines with Star Wars? Because there was a series of comics, God, 15, 20 years ago. I think it was called Star Wars Infinity. I think it's but they took one moment in Star Wars and they changed what happened, and it just kind of showed how it snowballed. Like the one that comes to mind is Luke died on Hoth, and Han Solo was there to rescue him, and he heard Luke talking about Dagobah, find Yoda, and all this stuff in his delirium, and then Luke dies. So Han decides, I'm going to go see what he was talking about. So he goes to Dagobah and finds Yoda and starts training as a Jedi. Like it was really crazy the way the comics kind of picked one thing and just watched how it snowballed. So why couldn't they do an animated series like that or something? I think it'd be interesting as hell to see something like that.
Hey guys, why don't we do something really quick for Brady Foster, because this is a really important point. Does everybody know, do all of our listeners perhaps know, I mean, do we consider it common knowledge, this the conversation which Dave Filoni had when he was talking about Duel of the Fates? Or was it not Dave Filoni? Was it?
It was Dave Filoni. Yeah, that's a great conversation. Yeah, if we can talk about that, absolutely. Basically, what Usef's talking about is on Disney Plus. There's a series called Gallery, and it's basically a documentary talking about how The Mandalorian was made. And it's kind of a roundtable discussion, and they switch out different people with directors, and Kathleen Kennedy's there for a couple of them, and Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni there for most of them, some of the visual effects directors, and they're talking about how they made the show because it was so much different from how like the prequels were made and even how the sequel films were made, and some of the technology they were utilizing. And I think it's in the second episode. The second half of it. If you guys haven't watched this, go check it out. Just trust me, if you guys don't have Disney Plus, it's worth paying for Disney Plus for 1 month just to go watch this conversation. And then it really is. Dave Filoni breaks down basically how the Duel of the Fates lightsaber battle in episode 1 is tied all the way to the lightsaber battle with Vader and Luke in Return of the Jedi. And how the Duel of the Fates isn't necessarily the fates of Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, but it's basically the fate of Anakin. Is that where you were going with that, Usef?
Exactly. Yeah. So the fate of Anakin is actually tied in the fact where Qui-Gon loses that fight. He dies. He loses out to he dies when and Obi-Wan is the one who basically picks up the pieces. And so the fate of Anakin is now sealed, because perhaps if Qui-Gon had lived and had continued to be the father. And that is what really, really challenges this idea, of Anakin and where he's going and where he's come from and where he's going. And this is, this ties in perfectly with this question of, why Qui-Gon is important. It's not just that he discovers him. It's not just that he brings him into light. It's also about what he represented to Anakin and what he would have done for Anakin. Yeah.
Now that you brought that up, because I wasn't even thinking about that particular conversation, but now that you bring that up, how it was the Duel of the Fates, I'm convinced now at this point that had Qui-Gon survived, things would have been way, way different. I don't think Palpatine would have been able to pull off the scheme that he was trying to pull off. I really think that was a galaxy I think that was a turning point for the galaxy. The second that lightsaber went through Qui-Gon's chest, that was the spoiler alert. That was. I feel like I have to say spoiler alert for the dumbest shit nowadays because people get mad at everything. But I feel like that was like the turning point for the galaxy. I really feel like it was. It's a great question. It really is. And Usaf, I'm glad you brought that up because seriously, if you guys haven't watched that, go. It's worth paying for Disney Plus
At
for a
least
month.
YouTube it. Even if you don't see the whole conversation, I know I saw some of it on YouTube. Even if you don't see the whole conversation, just watch whatever you can.
It's deep.
Fantastic.
It's deep. I mean, when I watched that, because I didn't watch it at first, I wasn't going to watch the gallery stuff, and I think it was Richard J. Actually, I think is the one that told me I needed to go watch it, and so
Richard told me as well. I think he told us all.
And I went and started watching it, and when I got to that conversation, the more and more he went into that, the more my jaw dropped. I'm like, Jesus, Dave Filoni gets Star Wars on a level that all of us collectively don't get it on. You know what I mean? Like he is. I mean, after hearing
he's taking it and moving forward. He's not just sitting there watching it. He's taking it and moving forward.
He gets it on a level that when he starts explaining why certain things happen the way they do, you go, holy crap! Like, so what has he done in the past so far that hasn't paid off yet? You know what I'm saying? Like, what is going to tie into the future eventually? And it's just the guy needs to be. He needs more to do in Lucasfilm than just what he's doing.
And as the apprentice to Lucas, I mean, he's trained with him for a decade at least. If we can trust one person to continue what George Lucas' original vision was, it's Dave Filoni.
It's him, and he can play the long game too. And Rebels proved that with the World Between Worlds episode.
Yep,
he can play the long game, and he knows how to plan stuff out, and it's. And he has fun with it too, like because I mean the whole Ahsoka thing was a huge mystery. Remember, and then he was teasing people with his T-shirt that says "Ahsoka lives?" ? And then it was "Ahsoka lives"
and exclamation point.
Yeah, and he has fun with it, and he knows that it's driving fans crazy not knowing this stuff. But those are the times when the payoff means that much more. You know what I mean? And when you build up to something that big, so yeah, I think he needs to be in charge of a lot more. Because like I said, eventually my goal, I know right now it's probably not in the cards, but my goal eventually is to convince that man to come on this podcast at some point, just so we can pick his brain for just a few minutes. It would just be amazing, and it really would. And to be able to sit down and just have a beer with the guy and just talk Star Wars, I mean, you don't even talk to him, just let him talk to you about Star Wars would just be amazing. Because when you think about it, he tells the story also about how he met George Lucas for the first time, and he never said a word to George Lucas. George Lucas just told him everything and explained all this stuff to him, and then he just got up and walked out, and he was like, so did I get the job? And they called him like a week later and was like, yeah, he liked you. So it just to be able to sit and have him talk to you would be, God, it'd be such an amazing thing. Because just that one thing, I never look at episode 1 the same now. I never do. And to think about, that's just one thing that he has explained. Think about all the other things in his brain and everything else that connects that we don't even realize yet.
Yeah.
I'm playing that part right now as we speak.
I think one of the greatest examples. Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Like you guys know this. Like I'm just playing it right now. The part of the Duel of the Fates battle in Phantom Menace. It's just fantastic.
I think one of the greatest examples of like payoff and how Filoni really gets it is like, okay, spoilers for Rebels, but gosh, I hope you've seen it already. But with like the Purgle, like we all thought the Purgle, like I think most of us thought the Purgle was kind of like stupid. And it was kind of like, what is the point of this? And then when you get to see the payoff in the finale, that's how you know Filoni gets it. That's how you know nothing is filler, nothing is throwaway. That's why even like as we watch some of these episodes in Mandalorian where you're like, okay, this was a slower episode, but knowing who Filoni is, and obviously with Favreau too, you know that some of these things that even though they might seem small now, they're gonna pay off, even if it means like 3-5 seasons later, we're gonna be like, oh my gosh, this is when this happened. Like that's how you know he gets it. That's how you know he just is able to create this story that you might not think it's important now, but like years from now, your mind's about to be blown.
Even Frog Lady from the second episode of Mandalorian was in season 1. She was in the background in the Mos Eisley Cantina, so they were planting those seeds a year ago.
And I love that it says, chapter 9, 10, 11, because it's like a book, you might get payoff at the end of the book, which could be chapter 50 or 60, however long it goes. And, It's all
That's
being set
perfect.
up at the
Yeah, you
beginning of
just
the
said it.
book, and
Yeah.
then you get your payoff when you finish the book.
That is the best way I think anybody could explain that. It's just you get the payoff later. It's like a book. Yeah, that's perfect. And it is a page turner.
Hmm.
And you know, we were talking about doing a what if series. Dave Filoni would be awesome for that. He really would, because I mean, you do an animated show and you have Qui-Gon kill Darth Maul. Well, first off, that alone sets off a chain reaction to where Maul never shows up during Clone Wars. Does Clone Wars even happen? You know what I mean? Like, and it's just this huge chain of events that it would be fun to see stuff like that, you know, and just tell people, no, obviously this isn't canon. Obviously none of this actually happened. This is just us having some fun in the universe. And it would be a great way for new storytellers to kind of come on the scene and kind of cut their teeth on doing something like that and see how creative they can be before you give them, you know, a new project on their own project in canon. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, well, anyway, I think that's going to do it for this episode. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Star Wars Canon Podcast. Guys, I hope you have enjoyed this first episode. I think it went really well with you guys.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, I think this is good. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in this week. I sure appreciate it. If you're new to the podcast and you like what you hear, be sure to give us a follow on whatever app or site you're listening in on. Check out the YouTube channel for upcoming reviews, interviews, and reaction videos, as well as the Facebook page to stay up to date on what's going on with the Star Wars Canon Podcast. Be sure to check out the Patreon account as well if you'd like to help support the podcast in any way. If, like I said earlier, if you want to get a question on the podcast, you can send it to us through the Star Wars Canon Library mobile app. You can email us on Star Wars Canon Podcast@gmail.com. Or if you have the Anchor app, you can record a message and send it to us that way. All those links can be found in the description of this episode. Like I said, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And as always, may the Force be with you guys.